Chapter 891. Although Li Man was troublesome, Yang Yi didn't care too much about it. After handing it over to others to deal with, he put her behind his mind. He was really tired of this kind of scheming life. He just wanted to live his own comfortable life. However, this weekend, which was November 1st, he had to go on a business trip for a few days. Previously, Lan Zhao Kai had helped him obtain the lease of the training island. It could be said that the land reserve of the amusement park had reached the standard. But this wasn't the time to celebrate. They had to bid non-stop and invite the top international design team to do a complete planning and design for the amusement park. It wasn't that the domestic design team wasn't good enough. Now, the domestic design team had a very good level, but it had to be said that many of the core technologies of large buildings and special-shaped buildings were still in the hands of foreign design companies. So, many times, the domestic design team couldn't compete with the top international design companies in the design of large buildings and special-shaped buildings. With the drawings, they could arrange the construction team of Lan Zhao Kai Company and even hire the top technical team to cooperate with them to carry out the first phase of construction. If a worker wanted to do a good job, he must first sharpen his tools. The design of this amusement park could be said to be the most important issue. Even for a mere drawing, Yang Yi might have to pay tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of design fees to the design team. In this matter, Yang Yi couldn't be a hands-off shopkeeper. Before the bidding, he had to go to the site with the technical staff of Lan Zhao Kai Real Estate Company to survey the site. Yang Yi himself had to first have a number of the approximate scale, standards, and requirements. He had to explain clearly to the design team that came to bid. Therefore, Yang Yi had to go to Jinling City's Wuqing County with Lan Zhao Kai for a business trip for a week. Although Jinling City and Jiangqing City were both part of Jiangnan Province, he couldn't spend a few hours every day going back and forth to Jiangqing City. In other words, this week, Shi and Murphy had to live without Yang Yi at home. Murphy was fine. Tong Tong was almost a year old now. Although he was still naughty, he was not as naughty as when he was just born. At that time, Murphy could not take care of him alone. Yang Yi also asked Ding Xiang to move in with them for a week. He asked her to help cook, pick up Shi, accompany Murphy, and take care of Tong Tong. Letting Ding Xiang be a nanny was indeed a bit of a waste of talent, but Yang Yi and Murphy trusted Ding Xiang and knew that Ding Xiang knew how to take care of people. As for Ding Xiang, she was especially happy to help Yang Yi and Murphy. Of course, Ding Xiang was not Yang Yi. Tong Tong and she would stick to Yang Yi and Murphy, but not Ding Xiang. Therefore, when Yang Yi was not by her side, Murphy had to face the challenge of taking care of the two children. Murphy was not sure whether she could safely get through this difficult week. The bigger problem now was Shi. The little girl was unhappy when she heard that her father was going on a business trip for a week. She wanted to go with her father. Yang Yi and Murphy were chatting in the bedroom while packing their luggage. Shi walked in with her little frog suitcase. She didn't even put down the lever. "Papa, can I go with you?" Shi looked at her father eagerly. "You want to go with me? But you still have to go to school. What should I do?" Yang Yi waved his hand and said to Shi with a smile. Murphy took Shi's little frog suitcase. She didn't expect it to be filled with things. When she opened it, she found that she had stuffed some of her clothes in it. The little girl also brought some of her favorite dresses. "I don't want to go to school. I want to play with Papa." She pouted slightly. She leaned against the bed and was bashful, unwilling to let go. "Papa is not going to play. Papa has a job, and it's very hard. It's not fun to go to a very desolate construction site to inspect it." Yang Yi explained. To be honest, Yang Yi wanted to take Shi with him. If it were 2 years ago, when he saw Shi relying on him, he might have asked for leave from Shi's class teacher and taken Shi with him on a business trip. The world was big, but his daughter was the most important. How could he not satisfy his daughter's request to follow him? How could he let down his daughter who relied on him? But now Yang Yi had made progress. At least, he could think about problems like a normal person. Not to mention that she was going to school, so she couldn't ask for leave casually. After careful analysis, He could see that it was harmful for Shi to follow him to the construction site or the desolate island to play. I'm not afraid because I have Papa by my side. Shi hesitated for a moment. She pouted and said stubbornly. After hearing this, Yang Yi couldn't help but grin. However, he didn't agree. He still persuaded her, "It's not a matter of whether you're afraid or not. The place Papa is going to is similar to the place where Grandpa and Grandma live. It may be even more desolate. It's very cold now. If you follow Papa around, your face will be wrinkled by the cold wind. It won't look good." For this reason, Yang Yi specially took out his mobile phone and found 2 pictures of women riding to the border. He showed them to Shi. One was fresh, and the other was unkempt. The contrast was sharp. This trick was indeed effective on Cici. The young lady who loved to look pretty started to hesitate. "Will I really become ugly?" Shi looked at her father suspiciously. "Yes, Papa won't lie to you. When you get up in the morning, you see how strong the wind is outside, right?" Yang Yi said with a smile. Cici grabbed the hem of her clothes. While pinching it, she pouted and said, But I'll miss Papa. Papa, can you not go? I don't want to go to the amusement park. I don't want Papa to become ugly." Murphy listened to the conversation between Yang Yi and Shi. She felt that it was warm and interesting. She happily interjected and said, "If Papa becomes ugly like in the pictures, will you still want Papa?" "I want Papa. I will always love Papa. But I don't want him to become ugly. If Papa doesn't go, Papa won't become ugly." She became anxious. She quickly raised her voice to express her feelings for her father. "Papa is a man. Men are different from women. Feel it yourself. Is Papa's skin thicker than Mama's? Mama's is softer?" Yang Yi smiled. When he saw Shi nodding, he continued, "So Papa isn't afraid of being blown by the wind. Look at Xian Air's father. He went so many times and didn't become ugly, right?" Shi blinked and said, "Uncle Lon became fat." You don't have to worry about that. Papa won't become fat." Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were having a good conversation, but he was messed up by Shi. It wasn't easy for him to find the right words. "Anyway, you don't have to worry about Papa becoming ugly. But Papa can't bear to take you to the cold wind. You see, Uncle Lon didn't take Xian Air and her mother to the amusement park, right?" She thought for a while, then nodded hesitantly. "Just for a week." Yang Yi rubbed Shi's head and said softly, "Papa will be back for a week. You and Mama stay at home. Sister Ding Xiang will drive you and Xian Air to and from school. You are responsible for counting down. After a week, Papa will be back." She was still a little reluctant to leave. She hugged her father's leg and mumbled, "I will miss Papa a lot." "Papa will miss you too." Yang Yi squatted down and hugged the little girl's soft body. He said softly, "When you finish your homework in the evening, Papa will video call you and ask you about today's situation, okay? A week will pass in the blink of an eye. Then I want to see if Papa became ugly." "Papa can't become ugly." She hugged her father's neck and shook her little butt in his arms. She was very dependent on him. Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He really didn't understand Shi's brain circuit. Why did she think of this again? However, she finally accepted Yang Yi's arrangement. Chapter 892. Early in the morning, it was drizzling outside the window. The sound of dripping could be heard from the balcony. It sounded like an annoying tune, foreshadowing the beginning of a troublesome day. Murphy did not sleep in. In fact, there were not many mothers with babies at home who could sleep soundly until they woke up naturally. Even though Yang Yi usually helped take care of the babies, Tong Tong woke up early in the morning. He needed to be coaxed and fed. Yang Yi could not help with this, so Murphy had to wake up early every day. When she woke up, Murphy subconsciously touched the side of her body. Although Yang Yi usually woke up earlier than her, the blanket beside her still retained his body temperature. However, today, when she reached out her hand, all she felt was a cool patch. Murphy suddenly remembered that Yang Yi and Lan Hao Kai had taken a car to Jinling City last night. Hey, I really miss you. Mo Fei suddenly remembered the fourth song in the album that Yang Yi prepared for her. It was a sad love song like an autumn tune, and it seemed to be very suitable for the situation. Now outside the window, it's starting to rain again. My eyes are dry, and I feel like crying. I don't know where you are now. Of course, when Murphy softly hummed the last line in her mind, she shook her head and sobered up. Of course, she knew where Yang Yi was. Last night, after Yang Yi arrived at the hotel, he had a video call with her and she. Mom he. Mo Fei didn't have time to think too much. In the crib next to her, little babe had already woken up. He didn't cry and just sat in the bed to play. When he saw his mother get up, he stood up excitedly, clapping his hands and laughing happily. Tong Tong had grown up a little. Not only could he stand up without support, but he could also walk upright. Although he could not walk very steadily, walking had become his favorite sport. Come, let mommy hug you. Murphy got off the bed and took the little guy out of the crib with a smile. She rubbed her head against him, which made Tong Tong burst into laughter. The weather was a little cold, so Murphy helped Tong Tong put on his clothes before she carried him to the room next door to wake Shi up. It was Monday, so Shi had to wash her face, brush her teeth, have breakfast, and then go to school. Fortunately, Shi could squeeze her own toothpaste and wring her own towel. Murphy only needed to wake up the sleeping girl and rush her to the bathroom. Where's Papa? Early in the morning, Cece was still in a daze. She squeezed her sleepy eyes, scratched her fluffy hair, and mumbled a question. Papa just went on a business trip yesterday. Have you forgotten? Murphy laughed as she hugged Tong Tong and stood aside. Little Momo rolled her eyes and looked at her sister. She opened her mouth and imitated her words vividly. Where's Papa? Where's Papa too? Why didn't you guys talk about Mom? Is Mom not as good as Papa? Murphy joked with a smile as she intimately scratched Tong Tong's delicate nose with her finger. Where's Papa? Little Momo, on the other hand, was against this sentence. While calling out, she anxiously pointed at Cece to her mother, as if to say, this is what elder sister said. After washing her face, Shi woke up. She remembered that her father was not at home. She felt a little regretful and reluctant, but she did not continue to pester her mother for her father. After all, her father had only left for a day. Today's breakfast was prepared by Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang came to Brother Yang's house to help, and she worked very hard to take care of Murphy and the two children, so she got up early and made a very rich breakfast. Western-style fried eggs, grilled sausages, ham, French toast, coffee, and Chinese freshly ground soy milk, lean meat porridge, cold noodles, and even a plate of fragrant golden egg fried rice were all placed on the table. When Murphy and she came down, they were shocked to see the breakfast on the table. Ding Xiang, why did you make so much breakfast? How can we eat all of it? Sister Fei, I don't know what you like to eat, so I prepared some of everything. Ding Xiang rubbed her hands in embarrassment as she put a plate of fruit salad on the table. It's a little too much. In fact, our family is not that picky. Basically, we eat whatever Yang Yi cooks. Murphy smiled as she patted the somewhat straightforward girl and said, Don't go through so much trouble next time, and it's a bit of a waste if we can't finish it. Yang Yi's family was not thrifty, but they were not wasteful either. Yang Yi and Murphy had always consciously cultivated the children's concept of not being extravagant and wasteful. Okay, I'll pay attention next time. Ding Xiang said embarrassedly, I can't compare to Brother Yang Yi's cooking skills, and I'm worried that you won't like the food I cook. How can that be? You've done it very well. It must be delicious, Murphy praised with a smile. Xiao Gua is benefiting from being with you. These words made Ding Xiang's face turn red, and she raised her head in embarrassment. Of course, when she heard Murphy's words, she also felt a little happy in her heart. After all, she usually felt very inferior and felt that she was not worthy of Guazi, who had a strong background. With such a big table of breakfast, Murphy still felt that it was a bit of a waste, so she simply called Lan Xian and Wu Jingjing over to eat breakfast together. "It's delicious." Lan Xian was not polite at all. She ate heartily and even shouted out praises. "Then, do you think it's better, this or my papa's?" What Cece liked was the liveliness of having breakfast with her friends. She quickly ate her fill and sat down on her seat, giggling. This question was somewhat difficult to answer. Lan Xian, who usually did not like to use her brain, was in a dilemma. She still felt that the food made by Uncle Yang Yi was delicious, but the breakfast made by Sister Ding Xiang was also not bad. If she told the truth, would Sister Ding Xiang be unhappy? She had just picked up a very delicious grilled sausage for herself. After a complicated calculation in Lan Xian's mind, she finally said with difficulty, "Now, Sister Ding Xiang's food is delicious, but your father may be able to make it better. Anyway, Uncle Yang Yi was not here now. But I think my papa's food is better." She still missed her father. Listening to the two little girls' naive words, Murphy and Wu Jingjing both convulsed with laughter. Murphy even said to Wu Jingjing, "Your daughter is amazing. Her mouth is too sweet, and she offends no one. Haha, she is a foodie. She likes whoever gives her delicious food." Wu Jingjing covered her mouth and laughed. As they talked and laughed, the breakfast was a little long. Murphy did not have a sense of time, but she reacted by herself. The little girl had just gone to the living room to pack her small school bag. When she saw the time on the electronic clock on the TV, she ran back to the dining room in a panic. Mom. Oh no, I'm going to be late." Murphy looked at her watch. It was true. 9 minutes had passed, and the Huijia Primary School started at 8 o'clock. There were less than 15 minutes left. It was definitely not enough time for Shi to go to school from Tingshan District to Wuhu District. Murphy did not know. She also panicked. "Xian Air, don't eat. You have to go to school as soon as possible. Ding Xiang, go and drive the car here. Sister Jing, have you packed Xian Air's school bag?" After a while of chaos, Shi and Xian Air got on the car at 7:57. Murphy stayed to clean the table. Ding Xiang would come back to take her to the studio later. Oh no, Shi's hair has not been tied up for her. I haven't prepared an umbrella for her. Murphy was cleaning the table. Suddenly, she thought of this and stomped her feet in annoyance. Murphy felt that she was not a good mother. Besides blaming herself, she also began to miss Yang Yi. Usually, Yang Yi was the one who arranged all these things for her properly. Now, Yang Yi had left for less than a day, but Murphy began to feel that many things were in a mess. Of course, Mo Fei's life was not too bad in the past. It was just that unknowingly, after getting married, she could no longer live without this man in her life. "Honey, when will you come back?" Murphy looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and thought to herself. Chapter 893. The morning reading class had already begun. Li Rulin held her textbook and walked around the class, supervising the students in the class as they read the text aloud. However, her gaze drifted back from time to time and fell on Shi's empty seat. Lan Xian's seat was also empty. The two little girls in the class had not arrived at school today. She did not know if they were late or if they were absent from school for some reason. Could it be that something happened at home? Li Rulin thought worriedly. She usually comes very early. She doesn't seem like someone who would be late. Of course, Li Rulin was leading the morning reading class now. She had to wait until she was free before she called Shi and Lan Xian's families to ask about their situation. However, not long after, Lu Xuanxuan's figure flashed by the door and waved for her to come out. Li Rulin was a little surprised. She arranged for her language class representative to continue to lead everyone to study before she hurriedly walked out. When Li Rulin came out, she finally saw Shi and Lan Xian with their heads lowered. In addition, there was a plain-clothed woman standing beside Lu Xianxian. Lu Xianxian explained to Li Rulin, "I was at the school gate just now and saw that they were late and were stopped at the gate." I thought that you weren't free now, so I helped bring them back. This is Yang Shi's father's assistant. The morning reading class was done in shifts by several teachers. Lu Xianxian didn't have any arrangements today, so she came a little late. When Li Rulan saw Shi and Lan Xian, she heaved a sigh of relief. It was fine if they were late, but nothing happened. Everything was fine. Moreover, when she saw the pitiful appearance of these two little girls with their heads lowered in shame, she also felt a little funny in her heart. They were really obedient girls. They didn't even need to be taught that it was wrong to be late. At this moment, the woman standing with Lu Xianxian said, "Hello, Teacher Li. I'm Brother Yang Yi's assistant. You can call me Ding Xiang. Brother Yang is on a business trip, so I've been picking them up this week." Ding Xiang handed over her business card so that Li Rulan could contact her more conveniently. She explained with embarrassment, Shi and Lan Xian were late today. Actually, it was my fault. I didn't know what time they were going to school, nor did I calculate the distance. Please don't blame the children. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I promise I won't let them be late again next time. It was Murphy's fault. The main responsibility was Murphy's. However, Ding Xiang felt that she hadn't done well enough and hadn't prepared well enough. Li Rulan had a good impression of Ding Xiang. It was drizzling outside today, and although Cici and Lan Xian were a little disheveled, the two girls were not drenched by the rain. Lu Xiaoyu tilted her head and thought for a while. Lu Kong was a traffic policeman, so he didn't have many opportunities to go on a business trip. Of course, it was still during the morning reading class, so Shi and Lu Xiaoyu didn't dare to talk too much. After she sat down, she took out her Chinese textbook and read seriously with the class representative. Lu Xiaoyu's energy wasn't as focused as Cici's. While she was mindlessly reading along, her eyes darted left and right. Soon, she found something new. "Hey, Shi, your hair is so messy. Didn't you tie it up?" Lu Xiaoyu whispered again. Shi did come a little late. While Lu Xiaoyu was talking, the bell for the end of the morning reading class rang. The children all dropped their textbooks with relief. The naughty boys even jumped up and shouted with their good friends. Almost in an instant, the classroom changed from the neat and orderly reading sound to a mess of talking and noise. Shi heard Lu Xiaoyu's question. At this time, she also noticed the problem. She grabbed her hair in surprise. It was really messy. If it were other girls, such as Lan Xian, she could casually grab her hair and the day would pass easily. However, she couldn't do that. Her hair was too long and thick. If she didn't tie it up, it would look as if she had just taken a shower and dried her hair. It would be messy and ugly. What should I do? She asked her deskmate for help. My mom forgot to tie my hair. It's okay, I still have a headband. Lu Xiaoyu enthusiastically opened her pencil case and took out two thick headbands. She said, "Look, there's a strawberry one and a small apple one. Which one do you like? I'll tie it up for you." Little you, you're so nice. Shi's worry turned into joy. She smiled sweetly and picked the headband with a small strawberry pendant. Tying hair was a necessary skill for a girl. Although Shi's hair was tied by her father or mother, and Shi also knew how to tie her hair, the little girl's hair was a little long. She did need help. She turned her back to Lu Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu skillfully gathered Shi's hair and tied it into a ball. Then, she put the headband on, folded it, and tied the hair again. Just like that, a simple ponytail was done. Don't think it was simple. It was already very good for a 6-year-old girl to be able to do this. Lu Xiaoyu didn't know how to do complicated hair. You've become prettier. Lu Xiaoyu looked very satisfied. She patted Shi's back and said to Shi. Shi grabbed her hair. The little girl's hair was soft and long. She could pull the ponytail to the front of her body. She wasn't picky. She turned her head and smiled happily with her friends. Murphy sat in the middle of the chair, so that she could hold Tong Tong and occupy Yang Yi's screen together. She went to get something for you. When she came back at night, she hid it, saying that she was afraid that the steamed buns would steal it. Murphy laughed. She didn't even want to give it to me. You've worked hard to take care of 2 children. Yang Yi's voice became gentle. He looked at Murphy in the camera, who might have just taken a shower and whose hair was still a little wet. He sighed with emotion. I think it will rain in Jiang City in the next 2 days. You should pay more attention to keeping warm. I remember. I will let Shi wear an extra sweater tomorrow. I forgot to bring her an umbrella today. Fortunately, there is one in Ding Xiong's car. Murphy said with self-blame. I said pay attention to keeping warm. When I'm not at home, you are the pillar of the family now. You can't catch a cold. Yang Yi laughed. Murphy pursed her lips and said in a low voice, Why do you sound so sad? I feel very sad when you are not at home. I miss you when I wake up in the morning. Now you say that I am the pillar of the family. I don't want to be the pillar of the family. Yang Yi was speechless and moved. He was speechless because Murphy thought too much, and moved because Murphy's voice reflected her dependence on him. He could only comfort her. I will be back in a few days. Don't be sad. I am not far away from you. If you really can't do it, you can take Momo here by car. Or I can go back when I am free. No, I'm just saying. Don't be so tired. You can come back when you are done. Murphy did not want Yang Yi to be tired, so she quickly shook her head. I will take good care of the children. When you were not here, I raised Shi alone for 4 years. She is not so delicate. The 2 of them chatted sweetly. Shi had already run back. She quickly took back her position and excitedly showed the biscuits in her hand. Papa, look, I brought back Teacher Li's biscuits. When you come back, I will give them to you, okay? She said sweetly. That's it. She is willing to leave it for Papa. Mom doesn't want it. Murphy was jealous. I will give it to Mom too. There are 2 biscuits. But I have to wait for Papa to come back. She twisted and turned in the camera and said embarrassedly. Papa doesn't need it. You and Mom can eat it. Teacher gave it to you. Why don't you eat it? Yang Yi was moved. Yes, teacher gave us a lot. Xian Air and I both ate it. Then I said to Teacher Li that this biscuit is so delicious. Can I take one and give one to Papa? She held the biscuit. She tilted her head and recalled the conversation at that time. Then Teacher Li agreed. She did not wait for her father to answer. She happily complained to him. Papa, Xian Air also took it, but she didn't take it home. She opened it in the car and ate it. For some reason, Yang Yi imagined Lan Xian looking at the biscuit in Shi's hand after eating it. Shi could only shrink to the side in fear. Yang Yi laughed. Then let's not tell your Uncle Lan about this biscuit. Otherwise, he will go back and ask Xair, where are the biscuits you left for Dad? It was eaten by Xianer. After Cici finished speaking, she also giggled with her father. After talking a lot about Shi's experience in school, Shi asked her father about today's experience with great interest. Dad mainly followed some experts today and drove around the construction site. Then we took a boat to an island to have a look. These places are very desolate now. Many of the buildings have not been lived in for a long time. Especially on the island, there are some historical sites. Today we just took a rough look. In the next few days, we will continue to inspect the site and have meetings to study. Yang Yi said concisely. Papa also took a boat. She was confused. In the end, she only caught this information and said enviously. Chapter 895. Yang Yi's video call lasted for a long time. After she finished talking, Murphy also spoke. She was just talking to her father happily, but Murphy simply missed Yang Yi. Even in the end, she was just listening to Yang Yi repeat what happened today. Her face was filled with a happy smile, as if Yang Yi was right beside her and she couldn't bear to let him go. However, there was a small episode in the middle. Yang Yi was talking to Murphy when he suddenly saw her turn her head and look to the side. Yang Yi only heard Murphy's exclamation. She. Didn't I tell you to go back to your room to sleep? Why are you here again? Murphy's exclamation and shyness were a bit like when she was still a middle school student who was secretly dating Yang Yi but was caught by her parents. Soon, She's clear voice came from the phone. Yes, I have already started to sleep. But I haven't told Papa that I miss him very much. Murphy threw Yang Yi aside and argued with She. But you have already said goodbye to your Papa. Why did you come here to tell him that you miss him very much? Wow, these words sounded full of jealousy. She was not afraid of her mother. Her voice was very serious as she said, Because if I tell Papa, he will come back early. I really miss him. Soon, Murphy couldn't stop the little girl in pajamas from squeezing over. She pouted her small mouth, leaned in front of the camera, and said to Yang Yi pitifully, Papa, if you don't sleep with me, I will be very scared. The video call lasted from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. In the end, Murphy had to change Tong's diaper, so she reluctantly turned off the video call function of WeChat. His phone was burning hot. Yang Yi lightly shook his head. The battery was a little low, but Yang Yi still had to make a phone call. If he was any later, Yongqing would have to sleep. After all, there were few entertainment activities in the countryside, and people generally went to bed early and woke up early. What's more, Yongqing's wife had given birth to a chubby son for him. It had only been a few months since then, and it was the time for him to toss and turn. But Yang Yi still had things to tell Yongqing. After the call was connected, Yang Yi simply exchanged a few words with Yongqing. He didn't have much to say to Yongqing, so he quickly cut to the chase and said, Qing, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, arrange a time to accompany Dad to the city. Take the train to Jinling City in Jiangnan, not Jiangqing. What is it? This is indeed a big matter, and I have to make the decision. Don't worry about it for now. Come with me, and I'll tell you the details when we get there. It's not convenient to talk over the phone now. After all, he was a man with a child. Yongqing still hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still agreed. I have no problem here, but will Dad agree to come over? Previously, when I went to Jiangqing, I persuaded him for a long time. Yang Yi smiled gently and said, Don't worry. Just tell him that it's about Jinling City's Wuqing County, and he'll know what's going on. He'll agree. Yongqing didn't ask any more questions. In the end, after listening to Yang Yi's complete arrangements, he hung up the phone. Phew. Yang Yi plugged his slightly hot phone into the charging cable and placed it on the table. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Today, he was in Wuqing County with Lanzhao Kai and the experts from his company. Yang Yi didn't just look at the abandoned buildings, study the landscape, and the distance to the training island. He also observed carefully. Other than the county leaders sent by Wuqing County to accompany them and some policemen in charge of protecting the safety of the investors, there was no one in their team or around them. There wasn't even a crowd of onlookers. After all, the land here was indeed deserted. The people who had been relocated in the past had all bought the buildings in the county's development zone. No one was willing to stay in such a desolate place. Tonight, before the gathering, Yang Yi, who was socializing with Lanzhao Kai, took some time to investigate the Yang family's ancestral hall. It was overgrown with weeds, and there was only a dilapidated building left. The door was tightly shut, so there couldn't be anything suspicious. Yang Yi guessed that the few spies that Yang Chongguei had seen back then had already been withdrawn. After all, it had been decades. Even in Japan, these files had been sealed. There weren't many people who knew about it. Who would waste a lot of money to plant spies in a place with no intelligence value? Therefore, Yang Yi felt that it was time to lay his cards on the table with his father. Besides, he also needed his father's opinion on how to deal with the ancestral hall here. With his father's opinion, he could then come up with an excuse and pass it on to the experts here, asking them to formulate the corresponding requirements for the designers. Yang Yi went to Jinling City. In River City, he still had some work to arrange. Yoon Yong-fong came to the building of Tianmei Entertainment today. He was looking for Ju Jie because there was a new arrangement for the show, the Limit Challenge. Manager Yoon, take a look at the other artists here. See if there's anyone suitable for your show. For example, we've just launched an idol group this year. They're all beautiful girls. Why don't you pick one? Isn't China's Voice still lacking a female host? There's only one male host. How boring. Nyo Miling welcomed Yoon Yong-fong warmly. Yoon Yong-fong was naturally not bewitched. He smiled as he played Tai Chi with Nyo Miling. Whatever tricks Nyo Miling threw at him, he easily countered them. However, it was still very annoying. Fortunately, Ju Jie hurriedly rushed over from his villa after knowing about it. In June, after the Limit Challenge's recording, Ju Jie's work became much easier. He was not like the others who still had to film and go to school. Other than continuing to support the show called Star and Star's Fate with Dong Wei and Xue Ling Long at Magic City TV station, he basically had no other work. However, Ju Jie preferred such a rhythm. He would be busy for a period of time and rest for a period of time. This young master, if she made him work around the clock, he would probably get tired of it. Of course, during this period, Tianmei Entertainment still arranged a few concerts for him. There were a few songs Yang Yi had given him, including the song Life in Full Bloom, that he had collaborated with everyone. Ju Jie's concerts were quite impressive. Of course, Ju Jie still missed the days when he was filming The Ultimate Challenge. Although he was playing dumb, he still had a great time recording the show with these good brothers, facing the challenges of the production team together, and traveling around the country together. Therefore, when Ju Jie saw Yoon Yong-fong, he said happily, "Manager Yoon, why are you here? Are you going to start recording the Limit Challenge again?" Yoon Yong-fong waved his hand and said with a smile, "The second season will have to wait at least until January next year." "I understand, we have to avoid China's Voice. Manager Yoon, I've been following this show for every episode," Ju Jie said with a smile. Yoon Yong-fong had come to look for Ju Jie mainly because he wanted to arrange for Ju Jie to record a promotional song for the second season of the Limit Challenge. It was only the recording of the song now. When everyone gathered to prepare for the recording of the show, he would also let everyone shoot a music video together. A song written by Big Brother Yong? Ju Jie was pleasantly surprised. He had not received any news from Yang Yi for a long time. Suddenly receiving such favor, he felt tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. Yes, this song is called Fly Away. However, you have to change your singing style. Director Yang said that you have to use your original singing style. Your hoarse voice is not suitable for this song. Yoon Yong-fong relayed Yang Yi's request. "No problem, I will definitely sing well," Ju Jie said happily. Chapter 896. Originally, Shi and the others wanted to play with Yu Xiaowei during the break. However, it had to be organized by Shi before the children ran to the third grade classroom to look for Sister Xiaowei. Shi still had many friends. It was impossible for her to look for Yu Xiaowei every day. Moreover, with Yu Xiaowei's introverted personality, she was far from being able to take the initiative. Therefore, they often only met a few times a week. However, last week, Shi discovered a very coincidental thing. Their first grade class 3 and Sister Xiaowei's third grade class 6 had their PE class on Tuesday at the same time. Now, they had another opportunity to gather together and play. Today happened to be Tuesday. During the PE class, Teacher Lu Dashan taught the children half of the class how to run and left the other half to allow the children to play freely. It was the same for Yu Xiaowei's class. The PE teacher clapped his hands and dismissed the students so that they could play on their own. Normally, Yu Xiaowei would sit alone on the stone bench under the shade of a tree in a daze. However, today, she was quickly called over by Shi, who was playing on the same field as her. Shi enthusiastically pulled Yu Xiaowei to participate in the girls' jumping rope game. At first, the two girls who didn't know Yu Xiaowei protested. They felt that Yu Xiaowei was a senior and was taller than them. It was unfair for her to participate. However, she stood her ground. With the support of Lan Xin and Lu Xiaoyu, the minority obeyed the majority. Thus, Yu Xiaowei still participated. However, when Yu Xiaowei showed her clumsy jumping rope skills, after all, she rarely exercised, the two girls who were playing with her no longer had any objections. She was such a weak elder sister. She was no threat at all. She would lose in an instant. She could even be a wooden stake to pull the rope. How could they have any objections? Jumping rope was not like jumping rope. The difficulty of jumping rope increased with the height of the rope. The few little girls used all their strength and took turns jumping up and down. Winning or losing was important, but before it was his turn, or when he was at the two ends, the girls couldn't stay idle and chatted. Shi's papa is not at home, and neither is Lan Xin's papa. Lu Xiaoyu and Yu Xiaowei were pulling the rubber band in front of the stake. She excitedly told Yu Xiaowei this new news. Unknowingly, Lu Xiaoyu's accent had been distorted by Shi. Fortunately, Lan Xin, who was standing aside and waiting for Shi, heard the difference. She shouted loudly, "My daddy is not papa. My daddy is Shi's daddy." "That's right. Why, Shi, do you call your father papa?" Lu Xiaoyu and Yu Xiaowei pulled the rubber band from their legs to their buttocks and asked curiously. Shi was jumping rope. The little girl was tall and had long legs. Moreover, she had good jumping ability. She was the best at this game among the girls. She turned her body sideways and jumped forward forcefully. She turned her body in the air and landed steadily in the middle of two parallel rubber bands. Then, the little girl's two long legs jumped up again and landed gently. Her feet were now straddling two rubber bands. Then, She stood sideways with her hind legs hooked on the rubber band. She jumped again and landed with her hind legs in the middle of the rubber band and her front legs outside. She didn't stop there. The little girl's legs outside, with her knees as the axis, turned lightly and stepped into the middle of the rubber band. At waist height, the rubber band started to become difficult. Lan Xin and Yu Xiaowei couldn't jump over it. Lu Xiaoyu also often made mistakes here. She was also struggling. The little girl's ponytail swung back and forth. She was originally very focused on jumping, but now that she heard Lu Xiaoyu's question, she was anxious to answer. In her anxiety, she didn't jump well. When she landed, one of her legs was outside the rope. Ha ha ha. Seeing she make a mistake, the girls who were watching by the side couldn't help but laugh. Next. Lan Xin shouted excitedly. She was the next one. She had been waiting for she to make a mistake. It was interesting. Lan Xin didn't like sports, but jumping rope was one of the few games she liked to play. Although she couldn't jump well, the strange thing was that the more she failed, the braver she became. The worse she jumped, the more she liked to jump. Unfortunately, Lan Xin's enthusiasm was limited to this game. After she gave up her position, she panted slightly and answered Lu Xiaoyu's question, because we all call it that. My mom also calls it that, and then my brother also calls it that. A girl next to her interrupted, I saw on TV that some people also call it that. My dad said that they are from Taiwan. The people there all talk like she. It's very funny. There are also people who call it daddy. Hee, my mommy is from Baodao. She smiled sweetly and said to the girl, but my grandfather is abroad. I haven't been to Taiwan. The children chatted, and soon the topic returned to she and Lan Xin's fathers. She, why did your father and Lan Xin's father go on a business trip together? A girl asked curiously. Because they are going to build a big house. Xin Heir's father is building a big house. She gestured with her hands and said seriously, my father and Xin Heir's father are going to build a big house together. No, they are going to build a very fun house. There are a lot of games in it. Wow. Lu Xiaoyu was envious. She, can I go and play? Before they could talk much, Lan Xin had already failed. She reluctantly came out of the jumping rope and gave it to a girl behind her. At this moment, Lan Xin also joined the conversation. She waved her hand and said, "You can't play now. It will take a long time to build. And it's not called a big house. My dad calls it an amusement park." "Yes, an amusement park." Shi's eyes lit up. "An amusement park is even more fun." Lu Xiaoyu's eyes became bright. "My father will take me to the amusement park during the holidays." "My father will go there too. We have been to the amusement park in Shanghai," she said, not to be outdone. "I have been there too. My father is the best. He took me to many amusement parks by plane," Lan Xin said. In the end, only Yu Xiaowei remained silent. Cici was very considerate and knew how to take care of this little sister who rarely spoke. She turned her little head and said with concern, "Sister Xiaowei, did your papa also take you to the amusement park to play? Which amusement park do you like?" Yu Xiaowei was stunned for a moment, and her eyes were a little lonely. After a while, she whispered, "I don't have a father. He doesn't want me and my mother anymore." As if she had something to tell her good friend, Yu Xiaowei spoke a lot of words in this sentence. But Shi and other friends were dumbfounded. What? Chapter 897. The weather was not very good these days. Even if it did not rain, it was a little gloomy. The weather on Tuesday was like this. Although the sun was not seen in the morning, it was not raining yet, so Shi and the others could still have their PE class outdoors. However, as if it had sensed Yu Xiaowei's sad mood, raindrops slowly fell from the sky. At first, it was very small and slow. Puff. A small raindrop fell from the sky and got into Lan Xion's hair. Lan Xion raised her head in confusion and looked around blankly. No one was playing a prank. At this time, the PE teacher, Lu Dashan, waved his arms and said to the children in a hoarse voice, "Come on, let's go back to the gymnasium. It's going to rain outside." The children, all over the mountains and plains, were like the minions of bandits. They shouted, screamed, and shouted strangely. In a burst of laughter, they ran into the gymnasium from all directions. Before long, the raindrops became a curtain of rain, continuously floating outside the gymnasium. Lu Dashan still had to count the number of children in case any children were left outside. However, he soon found that not only did the number of students in his class not decrease, but there was one more. "Hey, which class are you in?" Lu Dashan looked at Yu Xiaowei in surprise and asked. As a teacher, he was very competent and could recognize the only one who was not in his class. Afraid that her teacher would be worried, Lu Dashan took Yu Xiaowei back to her class and reported to her teacher. Only then was Yu Xiaowei allowed to continue playing with Shi and the others. "I'm sorry, Sister Xiaowei. We shouldn't have told you about Papa," Shi said to Yu Xiaowei guiltily. Just now, she realized what Yu Xiaowei had said before. It was reasonable to say that Shi should not be so mature and know how to apologize. However, when Shi was in kindergarten, she had a classmate named Ding Ling. She was also from a single-parent family and lost her mother when she was very young. When Shi's classmates went to visit Yang Yi's company, Yang Yi asked Shi to apologize to Ding Ling because Shi mentioned that Ding Ling didn't have a mother. Later, Yang Yi explained to Shi why he did this. Why apologize? Lu Xiaoyu was somewhat puzzled. Shi repeated her father's words. It's because Sister Xiaowei is upset. What we said made Sister Xiaowei upset, so we have to apologize. Little you also have to apologize because you also said it. My papa said that I can't mention other people's sad things. Lu Xiaoyu followed suit and apologized to Yu Xiaowei as well. Yu Xiaowei actually didn't blame these little friends. She quickly waved her hand, indicating that there was no need to apologize. However, before she could say anything, Shi had already hugged her. Yu Xiaowei was a little unaccustomed to such intimate contact. In the past, she didn't even talk to other girls much, let alone hold hands or flirt with other girls. Usually, only her mother and grandmother could hug her. At this moment, Yu Xiaowei was a little overwhelmed by Shi's hug. She stood there in a daze. Sister Xiaowei, it's okay. You still have us. We're your good friends. She hugged Yu Xiaowei with her thin arms and said very seriously. Yes, we're your good friends. Lu Xiaoyu liked to follow Shi. At this moment, she also imitated Shi and hugged Yu Xiaowei. One wasn't enough. There were already two of them. Lan Xian was also a kind little girl. When she first went to kindergarten, she was very shy. It was her enthusiasm that allowed Shi to get rid of her loneliness and have her first good friend. Therefore, when she saw the situation, she also hugged her with interest. However, Lan Xian's tonnage was a little big, and she even had a run-up. Like a cannonball, she pounced forward, causing Shi, who was at the outermost circle, to cry out, I'm going to fall, I'm going to fall. The hug alliance was broken up by Lan Xian's attack. However, the few girls still found it interesting and giggled continuously. Even Yu Xiaowei, who was in low spirits just now, couldn't help but be infected by Shi and the rest's laughter, and a smile appeared on her face. Without her father's problem, no one could help Yu Xiaowei solve it. However, with friends accompanying her through the sad times, wasn't that very satisfying? Yu Xiaowei, who had lived a poor life since she was young, still knew how to be content with what she had. When night fell, Yu Xiaowei was also brought home by her grandmother. Yu Ying still had to finish this month's work, so she dragged her tired body and came back at 9 p.m. Mom. Yu Xiaowei gave her mother a hug, just like how she hugged her back then. Actually, there were some things that she didn't say, but her mother could understand. She was concerned about her mother. The mother and daughter sat on the sofa warmly, looking at each other and smiling softly. Yu Xiaowei was also smiling. Her smile was a little faint and a little embarrassed, but it seemed that she was in a good mood. Mom isn't tired. Now is the time for the handover of work. I'll be busy for the last month. In the future, Mom will have time to accompany you. Yu Ying gently rubbed Yu Xiaowei's head and smiled. Yu Xiaowei had heard this many times, but she still liked it. Thinking that her mother could pick her up every day in the future, and that she could play with her on the weekends like the other children's mothers, Yu Xiaowei felt very happy. Her grandmother watched from the side and smiled at Yu Ying. She's very happy today. When I picked her up at school, she was secretly smiling. I don't know what she's happy about. Yu Ying smiled slightly and put her hand on Yu Xiaowei's shoulder. She smiled and said, What else can it be? It's Tuesday today. It should be her good friends from the first grade who came to play with her again, right? Yu Xiaowei was taciturn to others, but she would tell her mother everything. Therefore, Yu Ying knew that Yu Xiaowei had a few good friends from the lower grades. Regarding this matter, Yu Ying agreed with both hands and feet. Not to mention having good friends from the lower grades, Yu Ying felt that as long as Yu Xiaowei was willing to make good friends and gradually walk out of her introverted and autistic little world, this was a good thing. Yu Xiaowei was still a little reserved. She gently shook her mother's arm and then burrowed her head into her mother's embrace. Only then did she smile silently and nod gently. Mommy thinks that your friends are pretty good. They treat you very well too. Didn't you bring back a bag of handmade nougat made by Cece's father last time? Didn't you say that your friend called Cece brought you a bag of handmade nougat? Yu Ying smiled and said, Mom finally figured out what to give you as a return gift to them these few days. It was worth mentioning that although Shishi's name was very consistent with Yu Xiaowei's favorite book, Shishi's bedtime stories, whether it was Yu Ying or Yu Xiaowei, they just thought that it was a coincidence. They didn't even delve into how Shishi's name was written. Who would have thought that those legendary characters were living right beside him? However, Shishi's name also gave Yu Ying an inspiration. She smiled and took a few copies of the first episode of the Little Bubba's Adventure picture book from the bookshelf next to her. Currently, only the first episode was listed. This was the sample book given to her by the publisher. You can give these books written by Mom as gifts. Yu Ying said softly, if they like to read them, you can tell them that when my mom's new book is out, I will give them new ones. When she said this, Yu Ying still had a little vanity in her heart. Who didn't want to see their works praised? What's more, Ying also wanted Yu Xiaowei to be proud of having such a writer mother. Yu Xiaowei happily took the book and nodded her head vigorously. Chapter 898. As expected by Yang Yi, after Yang Qing mentioned Wucheng County to Yang Chongguei couldn't sit still and rushed to the city to take the train the next day. But even so, they only arrived at Jinling City on Wednesday morning. Yang Yi borrowed an off-road vehicle from Lanzhou Kai Company and went to the city to pick up Yang Chongguei and Yang Qing. At the station, Yang Chongguei and Yang Yi had a tacit understanding and didn't say anything. Although Yang Qing was very curious, he wasn't someone who liked to ask questions endlessly. He was silent all the way until Yang Yi drove the car to the hotel they were temporarily staying at in Jinling City. It was late at night, and it was too troublesome to go to Wucheng County at this time. Yang Yi wanted to let his 70-year-old father rest for a while. But after checking into the hotel, the old man's face immediately darkened. He took out the umbrella that he always carried and swung it at Yang Yi. Yang Yi hurriedly blocked it. Although he could feel that the old man didn't use much strength, he could still sense the extraordinariness of this large black umbrella the moment they touched. All the ribs of the umbrella were hard and heavy. They were all made of metal, and it wasn't the aluminum alloy that was easy to break like ordinary umbrellas. Yang Yi couldn't tell what metal it was at the moment, but he believed that if Yang Chongguei used his strength, even a tree trunk as thick as an arm would be broken. At the same time, the umbrella wasn't damaged at all. Yang Yi nimbly dodged and even had the time to think about the material of the umbrella. Yang Qing hurriedly came up to mediate. Dad, let's talk things out." "What talk? Do you know where Tai Zi brought us?" Yang Chongguei angrily rebuked. "I don't know." Yang Qing honestly shook his head. "For so many years, I didn't dare to come back. It wasn't that I was afraid, but I was worried that I would bring disaster to you children and your mother. I told him about this, but he still insisted on going to the mountain despite knowing that there was a tiger." Yang Chongguei was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. "Dad, sit down first. Calm down. Even though I don't know what kind of danger you're talking about, but Big Brother isn't a reckless person. He'll definitely consider everything before making a decision. Let's listen to his explanation," Yang Qing advised earnestly. Listening to Yang Qing speak in an orderly manner, Yang Yi looked at his younger brother in surprise. In the past, Yang Qing was not so eloquent. However, if he didn't look, he wouldn't have known. Yang Yi's previous attention was on the old man. At this moment, he only saw Yang Qing's clothes. Although it wasn't like the city people who wore suits and leather shoes, it was also neat and tidy. Gray sweater on the outside, the shirt collar, the shirt collar, the shirt, the buttons neatly buttoned up pants, and khaki-colored casual pants with a black leather belt. He was no longer the boorish man who used to work with a hoe and didn't care about his image. How should he put it? The current Yang Qing looked like a diligent, steady, and dignified village official. It seemed that in the past 2 years, Yang Yi had him take charge of the village's road construction project, mainly auditing the money, as well as organizing the village to set up a specialized modern agricultural machinery rental company. Yang Qing, who had been trained, had improved a lot. Of course, Yang Qing's improvement in taste couldn't be separated from the care of his wife, Zheng Shui. This was not a big deal. Yang Yi waited for Yang Qing to appease Yang Chongguei before he smiled and explained to Yang Chongguei, "Dad, you don't have to worry. It's not like you don't know my skill level. Compared to you, it can only be higher and not lower. Bull*T. When I was young, I ran amok in the 4 seas and was invincible in southern China." When Yang Chongguei heard this, he immediately blew his top and bragged. He knew that his son was indeed very strong. But a son was a son. How could he say that he was stronger than his father? Even if he was a dragon, he would still have to obediently lie down and call him father. Good. You are even stronger." Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "What I mean is that my skill isn't bad either. Plus, I used to be in that kind of army. What kind of situation have I not seen before? Since I dared to let you come here, I must have checked and confirmed that there were no ambushes. After confirming that everything was safe, I made this decision. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. Yang Chongguei spat out in ancient Chinese. He still wanted to reprimand Yang Yi for his recklessness. No matter what, you can't let your guard down. You are now the same as me. You have a family and a family. You are not a lone hero who can ignore everything. Yang Yi, who was listening at the side, was confused. Luckily, Yang Yi waited for Yang Chongguei to calm down before telling Yang Qing about the real heritage of the Yang family. Of course, this heritage was a historical heritage. The ancestors sold their family property and mobilized troops to save the country. The Yang family didn't have much property left for the descendants, so don't think about having any big treasures. We are the descendants of the Yang family army? After listening, Yang Qing felt that it was a little unbelievable. He stared at Yang Yi with wide eyes, then looked at Yang Chongguei for help, hoping to get some confirmation from him. Yang Chongguei nodded lightly. I have my reasons for not letting you know about this for so many years. Since your big brother said it, and we are here, you should listen to him. Why don't I let you come back to Wu Cheng County? Just like Yang Yi in the past, Yang Qing almost knelt down to listen to Yang Yi's story of how Yang Chongguei wreaked havoc in Japan. However, Yang Qing wasn't as calm as Yang Yi. His blood boiled as he listened. Not only did he look at Yang Chongguei with admiration, he also said with some grief and indignation, Dad, do you still have any enemies? I am also willing to help you end them. As expected of the Yang family seed, as expected of Yang Chongguei's son, Yang Qing also had a hot-blooded and chivalrous spirit. Unfortunately, there was no room for him to show off. Yang Chongguei slapped Yang Qing back onto the sofa and snorted proudly. Do I need a junior like you to do it? I never leave my enemies alive. Of course, after reminiscing about the past, Yang Qing and Yang Chongguei asked the most important question. Why did Yang Yi call them here? Yang Yi smiled slightly and took out a map of Jinling City from the bag beside him. This was a very ordinary tourist map, but after it was spread out, one could clearly see the various counties and districts of Jinling City, the tourist attractions, the mountains and rivers, and even every road was clearly depicted. This is Wu Cheng County. Yang Yi pointed to a large area in the east, then his finger gently drew a circle on the land around Soldier Training Island. Now, this piece of land is ours. Ours? What do you mean? Yang Qing was confused. Why did he feel that the area his big brother's finger drew seemed to be bigger than their village? After coming into contact with more engineering drawings, Yang Qing could also understand the scale on the map. It's ours. It means that I bought this large piece of land. Yang Yi looked at Yang Chongguei, who was deep in thought, and said, Dad, this includes our Yang family ancestral hall. Chapter 899. Yang Yi didn't tell Lan Cao Kai about his relationship with the historical Yang family army. However, Lan Cao Kai wasn't a fool. When he was discussing with Yang Yi about this piece of land, he had already suspected this. Now that he knew that Yang Chongguei was coming, this guess was basically answered. However, Lan Cao Kai wasn't a fool. He was also a smart person. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. Since Yang Yi didn't intend to tell him about this, Lan Cao Kai simply pretended not to know. Of course, when he asked Lan Cao Kai for the car yesterday, Yang Yi also knew that Lan Cao Kai would be able to guess some of it. However, both of them still tacitly avoided this topic. Of course, since Yang Chongguei was here, Lan Cao Kai still had to receive and pay a visit to the old man. After dawn, Yang Yi drove Yang Chongguei and the others to Wu County town. Lan Cao Kai had already arranged lunch. Don't worry, there won't be anyone else accompanying me. It's just me. Uncle Yang came from his hometown, so I have to treat him to a meal. Lan Cao Kai said to Yang Yi with a smile. Keeping a low profile, Yang Yi was very satisfied with Lan Cao Kai's arrangement. Also, in the afternoon, I'll send the survey team to the city to retrieve the blueprints. If you have anything else to do here, feel free to arrange it. Lan Zhao Kai also helped Yang Yi send away the company's experts to create space for Yang Yi and the others' private matters. Yang Yi smiled at Lan Zhao Kai and didn't say much. He patted his shoulder and simply thanked him. Thanks. In the afternoon, Yang Yi, Yang Chongguwei, and Yang Qing appeared outside the tightly shut Yang family ancestral hall. These few days, the weather in Jiangnan was not very good. It was gloomy. Although it was not raining in Wucheng County, looking at the sky, it felt like it would rain at any time. The Yang family's ancestral hall was already in ruins. It was said that the candlesticks, incense burners, and other ironware that could be sold for money had all been stolen. The door lock had also been changed several times. Of course, after there was nothing left to steal, even thieves were too lazy to come here. The door lock was rusty and the path by the door was overgrown with grass. Behind the Yang family's ancestral hall was an unfinished building. It was only 5 stories tall before it was abandoned by the developer. Obviously, when the land was developed in the future, this unfinished building would still have to be demolished. Yang Qing also noticed this problem. He looked up and said to Yang Yi, "Brother, when the time comes to demolish this building, you must be careful. If it falls, this place will be gone too." Yang Yi smiled and nodded. He naturally noticed this matter, but the key now was not the problem of this unfinished building. Yang Yi's attention was focused on Yang Chongguwei, who was deep in thought. Yang Chongguwei had not returned here for decades. After having a child and a wife, Yang Chongguwei was no longer the fearless hero he used to be. Revisiting old places, Yang Chongguwei must have a lot of emotions in his heart. However, the old man controlled himself well. After all, so many years had passed, what could he not figure out? He only stayed in his memories for a short while, then looked up and nodded at Yang Yi. Yang Yi took out 2 iron wires and gently tapped on the door lock. Although it was rusty and strenuous, because Yang Yi had opened it once before, he still opened the door with ease. Walking into the ancestral hall and closing the door with a creak, there was a feeling of time travel. The interior of the ancestral hall was completely decorated in ancient times. Even the murals in the middle courtyard were simple paintings of people using cold weapons to fight hundreds of years ago. Here, the murals are of our Yang family army, generations of people fighting by the sea to defeat the Japanese. Yang Chongguwei saw that Yang Yi and Yang Qing's attention was on the murals, so he opened his mouth to explain. In the entire Yang family ancestral hall, too many things had been stolen. What was left were murals and carvings that could not be taken away, which were left on the walls and pillars. Yang Chongguwei did not feel indignant. When he secretly took a few ancestral tablets and fled Jiangnan, he was mentally prepared to accept the destruction of the ancestral hall. But the ending was not bad. Only some property was stolen. Most importantly, the Yang family ancestral hall was back in their hands. Of course, the problem now was how Yang Chongguwei wanted to deal with the old site of the Yang family ancestral hall. Should he renovate it, or... That afternoon, Yang Chongguwei lit a few red candles that he had specially bought in front of the empty altar and performed a simple worship ceremony. Then he brought Yang Yi and Yang Qing, the 2 brothers, to sit on the stone steps outside the inner hall and chat. Fortunately, although the weather was gloomy, it did not rain. In this mysterious atmosphere, Yang Chongguwei seemed to be talking in his sleep. He told Yang Yi and Yang Qing about the grand occasion of the ancestral hall, the hardships he had suffered in the ancestral hall, and many stories that had almost faded from his memory. Yang Yi and Yang Qing only listened quietly. They did not interrupt, nor did they make any comments. It was a bit like they had returned to the past, when Yang Chongguwei had taught them martial arts. Time passed very quickly. In the evening, the sky was almost dark. The candlelight in the inner hall flickered. Although there was still a part of it, it felt like it would be blown out by the whistling cold wind. Yang Chongguwei also reached the final conclusion. He smiled gently. Tai Zi brought back our old Yang family's things. This is something that I did not expect. Tai Zi, when we go back, I will tell our ancestors about this merit of yours. Yang Yi opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Yang Chongwei waved his hand. People always have to look forward. The old man's rough face and big bell-like eyes were shining with the light of wisdom at this moment. Times are changing, and dynasties have also changed several times. How can the location of our old Yang family ancestral hall not change forever? As long as this inheritance can continue, it doesn't matter where our ancestral hall is located. Yang Qing was a bit surprised. Dad, you mean that we don't want our old ancestral hall? Then wouldn't brothers' efforts be in vain? Yes, we can't take it. Yang Chongwei said meaningfully, if we leave this place, it can be considered as a memory. But it's still the same as before. It's not suitable for us to carry out large-scale construction and restore the ancestral hall. The main thing was to consider the issue of safety. Yang Chongwei did not think that there would be any benefits to letting others know that their old Yang family had returned. Tai Zi's efforts will not be in vain. At that time, I had considered moving the other things here back to the village. Now that you have money, you can move the ancestral hall to a bigger place. Yang Chongwei's eyes flashed with a trace of excitement. At that time, he could only take away a small part of the things. Many side ancestors' memorial tablets were left behind. It had to be said that this had always been his regret. This is not a problem. When the construction starts, there will be countless trucks driving in and out of here every day. When the time comes, I will arrange a car to remove the murals, sculptures, and memorial tablets in the inner hall. Yang Yi nodded lightly. Then what about here? Yang Qing asked in confusion. Here. Yang Chongwei also had his own ideas. I can find the carpenters and stonemasons in the village to build another one according to this appearance and have someone send it back. The fake can be passed off as the real thing. Yang Yi understood his father's thoughts. He wanted to move the real ancestral hall away, but leave the fake ancestral hall in Jiangnan. This was no different from a cunning rabbit having 3 burrows. Dad, because President Landside had an agreement with the government, it means that we also have the responsibility to protect the cultural relics. Yang Yi smiled and said, in that case, I will let President Lan use this as an excuse to renovate the surrounding environment. Even though we want to move the real ancestral hall back to Anqing, this is still a place that symbolizes the glory of our old Yang family. If we simply clean it up, it won't be easy for others to see through it. It can also be well protected. In the future, when Shi, Chen, and Qingzi's children grow up, we can also bring them here to have a look and prove the greatness of their ancestors. Yang Chongwei weighed the safety issues and nodded solemnly, saying, simple as fine. Chapter 900. Yang Yi was not at home, so time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was Friday. Early in the morning, Murphy's hurried voice could be heard in the villa. Hurry up. After breakfast, go and drink a glass of water. Have you brought an umbrella? It's not raining, but I have an umbrella in my bag. It's best to be prepared. Today is the reading class. Have you put the materials the teacher asked you to read in your bag? After a few days of experience, Mo Fei also gradually found the right state of mind. She could not only arrange Cece's work and rest, but also supervise Cece's homework. She also didn't let Cece be late again. However, no matter how well Murphy did, she could not replace Yang Yi's position in Shi's heart. There was a song that was very well sung, missing you, day after day. She was the same. It was already the 5th day that her father was not at home. She missed her father more and more deeply every day. Her emotions were also more and more depressed. When she woke up early in the morning, the little girl was dispirited. She pouted and did not want to talk. Her face, which originally had some baby fat, seemed to have slimmed down a little. Perhaps the little girl missed her father too much. Seeing this, Murphy felt a little sad. She squatted down, opened her arms, and said softly, "Come here and hug Mom. Don't be sad. Papa will be back soon. Last night, when you had a video call with him, didn't he promise you that he would be back in 2 days?" Cece still understood the logic, but she just missed her father. Therefore, although she hugged her mother, she still looked unhappy when she got into Sister Ding Xiang's car. Ding Xiang comforted her as she drove, but it did not have any effect. No one could persuade her about this matter. Although she was in a bad mood, the weather was good today. The sky of Rivertown had been gloomy for a few days. Today, it finally cleared up. The sun hung lazily in the sky. It was not as dazzling as it was in the summer, but the bright and clean appearance of the world gave people a more positive impression than the cloudy weather. Perhaps it was because of the sun, or perhaps it was because she saw many smiling classmates at school, but Xishi's mood improved a little. Of course, if Lu Xiaoyu didn't touch the pot that didn't boil, everything would develop in a good direction. Lu Xiaoyu came a little later. She came in just as the bell rang for the morning reading class. However, the lively Lu Xiaoyu didn't want to sit obediently in her seat and wait for the teacher's instructions. She took out her textbook from her bag and put it in the drawer. Then, she turned her head and asked with concern, "Xi, is your father back?" When this question came out, Xishi's smiling face became gloomy again. The little girl pursed her lips and said with a little grievance, "Not yet." The last syllable was a little long, reflecting Xishi's helpless mood. "Okay, I forgot. Your father said that he won't be back until next week." Lu Xiaoyu patted her head. Although Lu Xiaoyu's question was a little inappropriate, she opened Xishi's mouth. Xishi really wanted to find someone to talk about how much she missed her father. "Little you said that I miss Papa very much. What should I do?" Xishi asked. "Then you can wait for him to come back and see him." Lu Xiaoyu thought about it and gave an answer that she thought was right. Compared to Xishi, Lu Xiaoyu didn't rely on her father as much. Her father was very busy with work. Sometimes, he needed to socialize. Most of the time, he wasn't at home. Even if he was at home, he would cross his legs and watch football games in front of the TV. How could Lu Kong be like Yang Yi, who did his best to accompany his child as she grew up? When Xi heard this, she was unhappy. "I said that I miss him very much. I don't want to wait for my papa to come back. I want to see him now." The little girl pouted her small mouth. When she said this, she was a little angry. "But if you cry and ask your father to come back, he will spank you," Lu Xiaoyu said worriedly. Xi shook her head vigorously. "My papa won't spank me." Lu Xiaoyu was a little distressed. She found that she was different from Xi. No matter what she said, it was useless. The morning reading class soon began. The teacher rescued Lu Xiaoyu. When the class was over, Lan Xian also came over. Lu Xiaoyu told Xi's problem to Lan Xian, hoping that she could come up with some ideas. Speaking of which, besides Xi, the person that Lu Xiaoyu admired the most was Lan Xian. Although Lan Xian was usually lazy, didn't like to exercise, and didn't do well in exams, in Lu Xiaoyu's opinion, Lan Xian had extraordinary wisdom. She could always come up with magical ideas. She could also take out snacks from the desk, drawer, and hat pocket. Anyway, Lu Xiaoyu couldn't think of places to eat. "This is easy." Lan Xian waved her hand casually and said, Xi, you can tell your father that you are sick, and then he will come back to see you." She was afraid that Xi wouldn't believe her, so she gave an example. "I often do this. Doesn't my father always go on business trips? I lied to him that I have a cold and that I miss you very much. Then he suddenly flew back. He flew back by plane. But if your father finds out that you have a cold, won't he beat you?" Lu Xiaoyu reached out to cover her little butt and looked at Lan Xian worriedly. "No. My father will take me to play. Well, sometimes he will take me to play. Sometimes he will buy me a lot of delicious food, and then I will let him go to work." Lan Xian opened her hands and gestured that there were a lot of delicious food. At this moment, there seemed to be a familiar background music. "We are different. Everyone has a different situation." Xi widened her eyes and looked at Lan Xian in surprise. She didn't know that there was such a thing. The little girl was a little moved. However, Lu Xiaoyu's next words made Xi hesitate. But my father will say that I can't pester him. His work is very important. I can't disturb my father's work. Lu Xiaoyu was a righteous little girl. This time, Lon Xian was at her wit's end. Should I ask my father to come back? She spent most of the day in a dilemma. Her mood only improved when she went to the library with Lon Xian in the afternoon for reading class. Xian, these books are for you. Yu Xiaowei was waiting in front of the first-grade reading class early, holding a few books in her hands. Yu Xiaowei looked a little nervous. This was the first time she gave something to her good friend. The little girl was very nervous. She was afraid that if she gave something away, others wouldn't accept it. Chapter 901. Yu Xiaowei was very nervous. She was so nervous that she couldn't even speak properly. She just said, "These books are for you." She didn't say why and just stuffed the books over. After stuffing the books over, Yu Xiaowei looked at Shi and Lon Xian eagerly, waiting for their reactions. Fortunately, Shi and Lon Xian didn't care. They were happy to receive gifts. "Sister Xiaowei, I love reading books." Shi excitedly took the books. "Wow! It's a book with beautiful patterns." Lon Xian exclaimed when she saw the colorful patterns on the cover. Yu Xiaowei saw that both of her friends liked the books, and her mood brightened up. She smiled and explained, "This is a book written by my mother. There are 3 books. Well, one is for little Fishy. I'll give it to little Fishy. I'm her desk mate." She was happy. Her melancholy from missing her father seemed to have disappeared. At least at this time, she was still the energetic little girl. Lon Xian was more supportive. She asked curiously, "Your mother can write books too?" Yu Xiaowei didn't notice the word, too. She just looked a little proud. It was rare for her to have such a strong desire to speak. "Yes, my mother can tell stories." If Yu Ying saw her daughter being proud of her, she would feel very happy. Shi's father can tell stories too. The stories he tells are very good. You can ask Shi to tell you. She learned how to tell stories from her father. Lon Xian helped Shi. Shi looked at Lon Xian happily as she flipped through the picture book in her hands. She was a little embarrassed to praise herself. Lon Xian introduced Yu Xiaowei seriously. Shi's father can also write books. My mother told me that Shi's father wrote a lot of books. Lon Xian and Yu Xiaowei were talking. Shi looked at a few pages. The more she looked, the more familiar she was. Finally, she said in surprise, "Hey, I've read this book before. My papa bought Xiao Bubu's story for me. I read it with my papa." In the end, Shi was a little depressed. She missed her father. Yu Xiaowei looked at Shi with some confusion. She couldn't understand Shi's meaning. "You've read this book?" Lon Xian asked. With her friends, she didn't continue to miss her father. She said seriously, "Yes. Sister Xiaowei's, this book, your mom's? Then your mom is so awesome. I love little Bubu's book. However, my papa said that I can't run away from home like little Bubu." Yu Xiaowei understood now. Shi had indeed read this book. However, after Yu Xiaowei nodded, she became nervous again. Shi had already read it. Would she still want her book? Shi's next reaction made Yu Xiaowei feel relieved. She was still happily stuffing the book into her school bag. She said longingly, "I'm going to take this book home and show it to my papa. He doesn't know that Sister Xiaowei's mom wrote little Bubu's book." For Shi, how could she refuse a gift from Sister Xiaowei? Yu Xiaowei breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know what to say. She could only imitate the words her mother taught her and whispered, "Xair, Shi, if you like it, I can buy it for you when the second book is published in the future." "You don't have to buy it." "Okay. All right, tell your mom to hurry up, because I really want to know where else little Bubu went to explore." Shi's eyes lit up. After Lon Xian was interrupted, she couldn't continue the topic of bragging about Shi's father. Shi and the others also didn't continue the conversation, because their respective reading classes were about to start soon. After Yu Xiaowei said goodbye to Shi and Lan Xin, she also hurried to her classroom. She returned home in the evening. After happily telling her mother about the new things that had happened today, she started to do her homework. The little girl's mood became sad again, because she remembered that her father hadn't urged her to do her homework for a long time. When it was time for dinner, Shi also looked gloomy. In fact, Ding Xiang's cooking was quite delicious. In order to cater to Shi's taste, Ding Xiang had called Yang Yi to ask for advice. She even strictly followed Yang Yi's recipe, including what ingredients to put and how much to put in. However, Shi still felt that it didn't taste like this, as if something was missing. Maybe it was because it wasn't her father's cooking? The little girl ate a few mouthfuls, but she didn't have much of an appetite. She grabbed her chopsticks and played with them for a long time, but she didn't touch them again. Come on, Mom will feed you. Mo Fei was also a little exhausted. On one side, she had to take care of little Wan, catch the restless little guy and feed him supplementary food, and on the other side, she also had to take care of Cici, who was becoming more and more uncooperative in the past 2 days. Therefore, as soon as she put down little Wan's bowl, before she had time to eat, she picked up Cici's bowl again. Oh. She shook her head, pouted, and said, I don't want to eat any more. You didn't eat enough. What if you're hungry tonight? Murphy asked with a frown. She jumped down from the chair, dodged the spoon that her mother handed to her, and said stubbornly, I'm not hungry. After saying that, she ran away. As if sensing that his little master was in a bad mood, Steamed Bun got up from the ground next to him, looked at Shi's back, then looked at his mistress, and turned to follow her. Sister Fei, it's all my fault. Maybe the dishes I made weren't to Shi's taste. Ding Xiang was at a loss. She sat aside and blamed herself. Why would Murphy blame her? She sighed softly and said, It's not your fault. She just misses her father. However, she couldn't not eat. Murphy was worried. She ate 2 mouthfuls of food and went to the living room to check on Shi's situation. The little girl curled up on the sofa and watched TV. Her head was pillowed on Steamed Bun's back, and her little hand was scratching Steamed Bun's head out of boredom. She didn't notice her mother's arrival. She took Steamed Bun as her confidant and whispered, Steamed Bun, did you miss Papa? Murphy looked at Shi's appearance, pondered for a while, and quietly left without saying anything. The video call with her father in the evening was the happiest time of the day for Shi. At this moment, Shi seemed to have thrown all the negative emotions aside. Papa, I miss you so much. She held the phone and said sweetly, a charming smile blooming on her little face. Really? Mom told me that you missed Dad so much that you didn't eat properly today, right? Yang Yi asked with a smile. She was worried that her father would scold her for not eating, so she quickly shook her little head and said, It's not that I didn't eat. I'm full. I don't think you're full. Dad saw that you've lost weight. Yang Yi said with a smile. She didn't notice that the environment in her father's camera was more chaotic. It seemed to be a restaurant, which was different from when her father talked to her quietly in the hotel. But what difference did it make? She was already very happy that she could talk to her father. She didn't care about the environment around her father. The little girl looked at her father's face happily and tried her best to talk for a long time. It was only when her eyelids began to droop that her mother snatched the phone away. She went back to bed in a daze and covered herself with the quilt to sleep. She was very happy in her dream. She dreamed that her father came back and took her to the amusement park to play. She just didn't know if she would have to face the cruel reality after waking up. Chapter 902. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the warm and fragrant bedroom. On the large pink bed, there was a little princess curled up in her bed. She clenched her small fists as if she was holding on to something. In her sleep, she even revealed a faint smile. This was like a beautiful painting that was specially drawn. The girl's face was also like an exquisite work of art. She had beautiful eyebrows and was as delicate as carved jade. She was fresh and cute. Even her long eyelashes seemed to have been drawn with a dark color brush, making people unable to put them down. The sun was about to hit her, but her mother still hadn't come to wake her up. Of course, because it was the weekend, she could sleep a little later. However, the little girl didn't seem to be able to sleep in because she heard the door lock click. The energetic Bao Bao pulled on the handle and pushed open the large bedroom door with his hind legs. Steamed Bun was very excited. He jumped onto the bed and then used his 2 front feet to step on Shi's arm and shake it. Woof, woof. Steamed Bun's noise woke Shi up. The fluffy-haired little girl sat up in a daze. She stared blankly for a while before she realized that she had just woken up. Hey! Steamed Bun, you're a bad guy. Shi's voice was soft. She rebuked Steamed Bun, who had already jumped off the bed and was wagging his tail on the ground. The sleepy little girl pouted her small mouth and said unhappily, I already dreamed of Papa. You made my Papa disappear. Steamed Bun didn't understand. He only knew that he was wagging his tail on the ground. However, this guy was a little too excited today. He restlessly paced back and forth on the ground as if he wanted Shi to hurry up and come down. Steamed Bun, you have to pay for my Papa. The little girl was very resentful. She kept muttering as she climbed down from the bed. She staggered into the bathroom to use the toilet, wash her face and brush her teeth. After Cici finished washing up, she even used a comb to comb her messy hair that had just woken up. The little girl's hair was already very long and thick. It was like a waterfall that spilled behind her. Since she had just woken up, she didn't have her parents to help her take care of her hair. She had to comb her hair in front of the mirror, but she couldn't make her hair look good. After she regained her energy, she actually felt a little strange. She didn't know why the second floor was so quiet today. For the past few days, her mother would wait for her to wash up and comb her hair before going downstairs to have breakfast together. Where did Mom go? Cici followed the steamed stuffed bun down the stairs, one step at a time. But just as they turned the corner of the stairs, Cici, with her sharp ears, vaguely heard her mother's laughter, and her father's voice. Papa. The little girl blinked her big eyes in confusion. She thought she was still dreaming, but when she walked down the stairs and looked in the direction of the sound, she saw a scene that she couldn't believe. It was just like 6 days ago. Her tall and big father, wearing an apron, was busy in the kitchen. The familiar smell of her father's breakfast drifted into Shi's little nose, hooking the little girl's hungry stomach. She didn't eat much for dinner last night. At this moment, she really felt like she was dreaming. Of course, there was a difference. Usually, her father would be cooking breakfast alone in the kitchen, but today, there was someone hanging on him. Murphy missed Yang-e no less than she did. But she was a mother, an adult, and had to be strong, so she didn't show it in front of Shi. When Yang-e returned home, she handed her son to Ding Xiang to take care of. She was almost like a koala, happily hanging on to Yang-e. Therefore, what Shi saw was her mother wrapping her arms around her father's waist, and the two of them were sweetly together. The transparent glass door of the kitchen was closed, and the sound of the stove and the kitchen hood could be heard. Yang-e and Murphy were so focused on their sweet love that they didn't notice Shi coming down from upstairs. Yang-e was still talking and laughing, picking up a piece of scrambled egg with his chopsticks and feeding it to Murphy. It was as greasy as it could get. She blinked her big eyes for a long time before she came back to her senses. It was as if a light flashed through the little girl's mind, and she understood. This wasn't a dream. Daddy was really back. She was extremely excited and aggrieved. The little girl pursed her lips and ran over. Under the surprised gazes of her father and mother, she opened the kitchen door and plunged her head into her father's arms. Shi, you're up? When Yang-e heard the noise, he hurriedly turned off the fire, turned around, tore off his apron, and bent down to catch his daughter. Everything was done in one smooth motion. Yang-e picked up Shi from the ground. The little girl hugged her father's neck and snuggled into his arms. Although she didn't cry, her little mouth pouted, as if she was unhappy and wanted to be comforted. Murphy, who was beside her, stretched out her finger and scratched the little girl's face. She said in amusement, "What's wrong? Haven't you always wanted Papa to come back? Why are you unhappy to see Papa now?" She didn't want to. She felt that her mother was bullying her. She turned her little head, buried her face in her father's arms, and whimpered as if to protest to her father. After a long while, she was happy, but she didn't want to show it. She pouted her little mouth and said sweetly to her father, "Why are you back? You didn't tell me." "Haha, didn't Papa want to give you a surprise?" Yang Yi held she's little but with one hand and held her firmly in front of him. He gently combed she's hair with the other hand and said with a smile, "Your mother called me at noon yesterday and said that you missed Papa very much. Then she called me last night and said that you didn't want to eat, so Papa rushed back overnight." "Really?" She was like a little fangirl. She held her little hands in front of her body and stared at her father's face with her big eyes. "Yes, didn't Papa have a video call with you last night?" Yang Yi smiled. At that time, Papa was already on the road. In order to continue the video call with you, Papa specially found a roadside restaurant. So that was the case. No wonder the background of Yang Yi's video call last night was so messy. However, Cici wouldn't think too much about this. When the little girl heard that her father had rushed back for her, she felt sweet in her heart. She had long forgotten to think and complain. She smiled happily, and her eyes seemed to be blooming with brilliance. "Papa was thinking that after making breakfast, I would go upstairs to wake you up. I didn't expect you to get up on your own," Yang Yi said softly. She pointed outside. Steamed Bun was not allowed to enter the kitchen and was obediently staying in the dining room. She smiled and said, "It was Steamed Bun who woke me up." It was all Steamed Bun's fault. If it hadn't woken her up, it would have been her father who woke her up. Chapter 903. He. At the breakfast table, she kept laughing. Perhaps influenced by her, Tong, who didn't know why her sister was laughing, also danced and laughed. It was as if everyone was having fun eating breakfast. However, this was not the case. She was laughing because her father was back today. The little girl was in a very good mood, and she was much less likely to laugh. Whether it was Yang Yi telling them some interesting things about the construction site or Murphy talking about how she felt about taking care of 2 children these days, she was happy to listen. Was it so funny? Murphy couldn't help laughing. She asked she with a smile, "Didn't I just say that you were a naughty little monkey? I asked you to go to sleep, but you sneaked back." She made a face at her mother and then looked at her father. She was smiling happily, as if with her father around, everything became happy. Yang Yi actually took time to come back. Today, the experts had to sort out Yang Yi's requirements and do a simulation evaluation. Basically, Yang Yi had nothing to do, so he rushed back overnight. He planned to go back to Jinling City after sleeping with she tonight. If everything went well, he would be busy for the whole day tomorrow. Basically, he only needed to provide opinions and reviews remotely, and he didn't need to go to the site to investigate. When she heard that her father had to go on a business trip tomorrow, she was not sad because it was only one day. She could close her eyes and open them, and her father would be back. What was there to be afraid of? "Papa, look, this is my homework. I've finished it." Since her father was back, she had to work hard to show her obedient appearance and let her father praise her more. After breakfast, she brought her father to her desk, took out her textbooks and homework from her small school bag, and handed them to her father for inspection. Yang Yi didn't have to check. Murphy had already signed it, but she looked at him expectantly. She wanted him to see that she was doing her homework seriously. Yang Yi opened it and looked at it. "Very good. You finished your homework, but you still have to write seriously. It's a little sloppy." Yang Yi commented, "When Papa comes back, I'll teach you calligraphy." She still wanted to show off in front of her father. She opened the textbook excitedly, pointed to the articles on it, and said, "Papa, we taught these lessons. Let me read them to you. The sea, blue, wide and round. The beach, yellow, long and soft." The little girl's voice was clear and pleasant. Although she hadn't learned to read with emotion, she imitated the tone of the teacher. Her cadence was still very good. Yang-yi wasn't perfunctory. Since he was accompanying Cece to review her homework, he listened very carefully. During the process, he even interrupted her. "This part is wrong. It's not wide and round, it's wide and far." Round means round like this ball, and far means distance, referring to the distance. After reading several texts, she still wanted to continue. She took out 2 identical books from her school bag. The Adventures of Little Bubu? Yang-yi raised his eyebrows. At first, he thought that she had taken the extracurricular books at home to school, which was not allowed by Yang-yi. However, Yang-yi wasn't in a hurry to blame her. He wanted to listen to what she had to say first. She forgot to tell her father about it yesterday. At this time, she was full of interest and wanted to introduce it to her father. "This was given to me by Sister Xiaowei. This is mine. This is the one I want to give to Xiaoyu." Sister Xiaowei? Of course, Yang-yi knew this name. However, he was a little surprised. Why would Sister Xiaowei give books to her friends? "Papa, you don't know." She shook a small hand and said excitedly, "This book was written by Sister Xiaowei's mom. Then I told Sister Xiaowei that I had read the book written by her mom and liked Little Bubu very much. Then, Sister Xiaowei was also very happy. She said that if there were new books, she would give them to us." Yang-yi couldn't help laughing. At this moment, he understood. It turned out that it was such a coincidence that Sister Xiaowei's mother was the author of this book. "Your friend's mother is called Yu-ing, right?" Yang-yi smiled and asked. Yang-yi didn't have an impression of Yu-ing. When he was in a meeting with Manager Liu, he accidentally met the woman. Yang-yi had long forgotten about her. Moreover, there were countless authors who contributed to the foundation. How could he remember a passerby? The reason why he could call out Yu-ying's name was that Manager Liu told him that this month, a dark horse appeared in the Sahara Publishing House. The Adventures of Little Bubu appeared on the bestseller list of children's books in less than 2 weeks. Although it was far from being comparable to Yang-yi's story collections, it had achieved the best results among the published works supported by the foundation so far. The author's name was Yu-ing. Therefore, Yang-yi had an impression of her. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. She shook her head and said, "I don't know the name of Sister Xiaowei's mom, but I know that Sister Xiaowei's name is Yu Xiaowei." "Yu Xiaowei? Oh yes, you also told Dad on Tuesday that Yu Xiaowei doesn't have a father." Yang-yi understood something. "Yes. Because I am Sister Xiaowei's super good friend. Sister Xiaowei gave these books to us." She didn't have any shrewdness and smiled innocently. Yang-yi thought a little too much. After all, Yu-ing was separated from him by the foundation. However, from Shi's performance and the words of Sister Xiaowei that she relayed, Yang-yi knew that Yu-ing and Yu Xiaowei probably didn't know Shi's identity. Moreover, Yu Xiaowei was also an introverted and autistic poor child. Yang-yi just thought about it and shook his head. He didn't think about it with a suspicious attitude. Maybe she was just being kind, and his random suspicions might hurt this introverted girl. Besides, even if they knew his identity, so what? Yu-ing had already made a name for herself with her own efforts. She could be considered an author with small achievements. Yang-yi felt that she had no reason to cling to him. Like Shi's other friends, Yang Luoqi, Chen Shiyun, Nan Zhaoyu, and even Shi's deskmate, Lu Xiaoyu, who came to play at home some time ago. How could the parents of those children not know his identity? However, in order to maintain the purity of their children's friendship, the communication between the parents generally concealed the gap between their identities tacitly. "Papa, I want Sister Xiaowei to come to our house to play, and Xiaoyu also said that she likes to come to our house to play. Can we invite them to play again?" She looked at her father expectantly. Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's little head and said with a smile, "Of course, when Papa comes back next week, you can arrange for them to come over on the weekend." "Yeah, that's great." She jumped up happily. Chapter 904. The filming for The Shawshank Redemption was completed in September. After Guazi finished filming, he went back to school to attend classes. Of course, he also talked to Ding Xiang about their relationship. However, Guazi was not in a hurry to accept new movie contracts. Although his popularity had increased because of The Limit Challenge and the video of the Seve dance, many film companies still sent him scripts and invited him to audition. Guazi did not attend the audition, not because he was arrogant, but because he was waiting. He was waiting for Du Yuanlei, who was still learning editing from director Wu Yian, to come back. The role of the mouse in the upcoming drama Yu Zue had already been reserved for Guazi. Of course, in order to play this role well, Guazi also used his connections in the police station to help him hire a master who knew how to cheat to teach him how to play cards. Now that Du Yuanlei was back, she could not stay idle. She immediately set up her own crew. Most of the crew was still the same, including her exclusive cameraman Wang Chao, lighting designer Zhu Liang, makeup artist Long Ni, and so on. However, because this was no longer a student production, Du Yuanlei also hired some experienced professionals. Some of them were even seconded from the Limit Challenge crew, such as the stage supervisor, sound engineer, prop artist, costume artist, and so on. It must be mentioned that after the first season of The Limit Challenge ended, although most of the crew were transferred to the crew of China's Voice, there was still a difference between a reality show and an indoor music variety show. Many of them were temporarily idle. China Star Productions Foundation was still a little worse than other production companies and television stations. They did not have many programs, so everyone was too busy to take a break. It was good to have a break, but if the break lasted for a few months, it was easy to get into trouble. At the end of September, China Star Production experienced a turbulence. A total of 7 cameramen and executive directors were poached by their peers. One of the executive directors and 2 cameramen went to Xingyao Production. It was said that they had already joined the filming of The Travel Challenge. Although China Star Productions did not lack cinematographers and executive directors, they were also constantly recruiting people. As long as the main directors and scriptwriters were not poached, China Star Productions would not be hurt. However, after the poaching incident, Yang Yi and Yun Yongfeng, as well as a few executives of Zhongxing Productions and a few directors, had a meeting to come up with a strategy to prevent such a situation from happening again. On one hand, Yang Yi had spent a lot of money to sign non-competition agreements with the key figures in the company. On the other hand, he had also asked Yun Yongfeng to arrange for the employees who were still on vacation to be loaned to familiar TV stations to do outsourced work. The company's commission was very small and was only used for daily operations. The remaining profit that was not taken was also considered some benefits for them. There was no need to talk about these unpleasant things for the time being. It was better to return to the set of Du Yuanlei's Remaining Sin. While Du Yuanlei was preparing for the filming of this TV series, she had also begun a nationwide casting call. Many roles, including the main character, Remaining Sin, were still available. 2 years ago, when they were filming Fairy Tale and The Fugitive, both Du Yuanlei and Yang Yi were still unknown in the film and television industry. Du Yuanlei had to rack her brains to find suitable actors. Some actors had even rejected the invitation to audition because they looked down on her. If it were not for the fact that Du Yuanlei was highly valued by some teachers in the film school of River City's Media University and had invited some actors with good acting skills to support her and even taught Zhang Lei, the old man would have rolled up his sleeves and entered the scene personally. The filming of The Fugitive might not have gone so smoothly. Now, the situation was completely different. Du Yuanlei was considered a director who had entered the 100 million box office club. Many small-time actors who wanted to be famous would not dare to look down on her. Even if some actors who were already famous and some management companies who had a lot of resources in their hands might still look down on Du Yuanlei, they could not ignore Yang Yi, who stood behind this TV series. Yu Zue, was written by Yang Yi after all. Yang Yi could be said to be the most bug-like existence in the entertainment industry in recent years. As long as someone was related to him, whether they acted in his movies, sang his songs, or appeared on his shows, everyone's popularity would skyrocket. Of course, the most important thing was that Yang Yi's works were all successful. Fairy Tale was the ancestor of micromovies. Despite the proliferation of micromovie competitions in recent years and the endless number of good works, it was still the benchmark of micromovies. Countless film schools and teachers could not avoid this micromovie that was similar to a music video when it came to micromovies. The Fugitive had made a name for itself during the off-season and had also earned hundreds of millions in the box office. Its unique and humorous plot had won unanimous praise from the audience. Soldier's Assault was broadcast at the beginning of the year and its results did not need to be detailed. Until October, no TV series had broken its ratings record. Obviously, it was almost guaranteed to be the best TV series of the year. Even if it had not been broadcast yet, Drawing Sword, which was the big show to start the new year next year, had become popular even before it was broadcast. Countless fans of Soldier were now eagerly waiting for the series. With so many successful works as a foundation, Yang Yi's new TV series project as the screenwriter naturally received strong attention from the industry from the beginning. As soon as Du Yuanlei's news was released, she received countless audition requests. Du Yuanlei and the crew were so busy dealing with these requests that their heads were spinning. They hadn't even officially arranged for the actors to come to the audition yet. That evening, Du Yuanlei, who had been tired all day, decided to have a cup of coffee to relax. Therefore, she went to a familiar coffee shop on the corner of the street. Ding Xiang was not at the coffee shop. She had gone to train with Guazi, leaving Yang Huan alone. Yang Huan did not plan to be alone in the room. She went down to the coffee shop and chatted with Sugar Cube, who was on duty. Yang Huan was also quite familiar with Du Yuanlei. When she was admitted to the film school, she had also received acting training from Du Yuanlei and some of her seniors. The two lonely people chatted, and Du Yuanlei even gossiped about the relationship between Guazi and Ding Xiang. Guazi had pursued Du Yuanlei before, but that had been a long time ago. Moreover, in Du Yuanlei's opinion, she was much older than Guazi. Now that she thought about it, she did not take it to heart. She only thought that Guazi was too young, and did not consider the problem maturely. However, as Du Yuanlei chatted with Yang Huan, she looked at Yang Huan and suddenly had a thought. Yang Huan was skilled in martial arts. Du Yuanlei's mind was filled with the various characters and their plot in Yu Zue for the past few days. When she saw Yang Huan, Du Yuanlei thought of Lin Yujing, the policewoman of the narcotics unit, who had a complicated emotional entanglement with Yu Zue. Many actresses had submitted their resumes for the role of the female lead, hoping to audition for it. However, Du Yuanlei had seen their resumes, including some of their videos, and realized that most of them were just flowery and impractical. Each and every one of them was delicate. How could they play the role of this shrewish and skilled policewoman well? Yang Huan was different. She knew martial arts, which was her advantage. In The Limit Challenge, Yang Huan was very shrewish, not delicate at all, which was very similar to Lin Yujing. Moreover, Yang Huan was tall and slender, and her looks were passable. In the end, Du Yuanlei looked meaningfully at Yang Huan's bulging chest. Well, the size is not bad. It should be enough if you stuff it with something. Du Yuanlei suddenly became silent, and Yang Huan also noticed that Du Yuanlei was sizing her up. Yang Huan was creeped out by Du Yuanlei's last look. She pulled her coat and asked curiously, "Sister Du, why are you looking at me like that?" Du Yuanlei smiled and did not explain her behavior. Instead, she said directly, Huan, are you interested in auditioning for a role in my crew? Let's see if you are suitable for the role. Chapter 905. A new week began when she was woken up from her bed by her father. Yang Yi did not disappoint Shi. On Monday morning, He appeared by her bedside and intimately pinched the nose of the little girl who was acting coquettishly and refused to get up. Only then did she giggle, turn over, and climb out of bed. The morning was happy. When she arrived at school, she was still full of positive energy. She hummed a song and tidied up her textbooks on her desk. Today, Lu Xiaoyu also came early. She almost followed behind Shi. Seeing that her little friend was back to her usual lively self, she was also very happy. The tear-stained she was pitiful, but in the end, it was more comfortable to get along with a sunny and smiling little girl. Lu Xiaoyu took the book from Sister Xiaowei that she gave her. However, she was not that interested in books. She stuffed it into the drawer and chatted with Shi about the interesting things that happened during the weekend. Your father came back on Saturday? Lu Xiaoyu asked in surprise. Yes. When I woke up in the morning, I saw my papa making breakfast for me. Shi's little face was brimming with a happy smile. Then did you tell your father that you caught a cold? Lu Xiaoyu asked with her eyes shining. Lu Xiaoyu still remembered the things that they discussed last week. Lan Xian's suggestion really subverted her way of thinking. No. My papa came back by himself. She shook her head and said, I don't want to lie to papa and say that I caught a cold. Okay then. Lu Xiaoyu actually felt a little disappointed and regretful. Speaking of this, she suddenly remembered what her father said to her on Saturday. She happily said to Lu Xiaoyu, Little you, let me tell you, my papa said that this week, you can come to our house to play. Really? Lu Xiaoyu asked in surprise. That's right. I also want to invite Sister Xiaowei and the others, she said as she tapped her fingers. Great. We can go to Shi's house to play again. Lu Xiaoyu happily danced in her seat. On Wednesday night, Guazi went home. It was mainly because his brother, who was an official in the countryside, rarely came back to the city for business. Gua Zhangyan, who was Guazi's father, had no other plans, so the family gathered together for dinner. At the dinner table, it was mainly Gua Zhangyan who asked his eldest son about some government affairs. He had the intention of testing him and also had the intention of giving him pointers. Guazi, on the other hand, was trying his best to be invisible so that they wouldn't point their spears at him as they chatted. Although the Gua family had given up on interfering with Guazi's development in the entertainment industry, they still hoped that Guazi would walk on the right path. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Guazi saw that there was nothing else for him to do, so he prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, Gua Zhangyan glanced over and said, Z, don't be in a hurry to go back to school. Come here, I have something to ask you. As expected of a mayor, Gua Zhangyan's loud voice revealed a sense of majesty, not allowing Guazi to resist. Guazi had no choice but to sit down obediently. His brother didn't speak again. After pouring tea for them, he sat down and listened quietly. His calm sitting posture made him look like a second Gua Zhangyan. Gua Zhangyan wasn't in a hurry to speak. He picked up the teacup and blew on the tea leaves floating on it. After taking a sip, he slowly looked over and said, I heard that you are now helping your friend, Yang Yi, to find connections with the Public Security Bureau to prepare to film a police and robbers TV series? Hearing his father ask this question, Guazi couldn't help but straighten his back and tense his face. Gua Zhangyan had a background of arresting corrupt officials. His previous reputation was well known in Jiangnan province. However, he chose to develop horizontally and finally became the mayor from the executive deputy mayor. However, Guazi knew that his father was most against his family members being like those corrupt officials' families, abusing their power for personal gain. Therefore, he quickly explained, I'm not trying to pull connections, Dad. It's like this. We are filming this TV series, so we need some support for the venue and costumes. We also need some professional guidance. Therefore, the crew wants to cooperate with the Public Security Bureau of Jiangqing. Moreover, this cooperation is not one-sided. For example, the rental of the venue and the hiring of consultants, the crew will pay for it. I'm just helping them to build a bridge. Gua Zhangyan knew about this situation. Since he asked this question, someone must have reported it to him in advance. He nodded non-committally and changed the topic. He said, "Tell me about your friend, Yang Yi. What kind of person is he?" Guazi sat upright. He vaguely felt that this was a test, so he didn't dare to mess around. He seriously described Yang Yi to his father and even picked out many things about Yang Yi's relationship with the government. For example, Yang Yi was the spokesperson of the Southwest Military Region. For example, Yang Yi had a deep relationship with the leaders of the Jiangnan Military Region. 2 of his TV series were filmed in the Jiangnan Military Region. Of course, there were many social and even national awards. Although Yang Yi didn't pay much attention to them and almost never attended the award ceremony, he did receive many personal awards. These were all received by Mo Shaowan and placed in the studio. According to what little brother said, this Yang Yi is really a legendary person. Guazi's brother said to Gua Zhengyan with a smile, "Brother Yang is too awesome. You will never know how amazing he is. Every once in a while, he can surprise people." Guazi boasted. "This Sunday night, ask him out for dinner. I want to meet him." Gua Zhengyan finally revealed his intention to call Guazi over. Guazi was a little surprised. "Dad, why do you want to meet Brother Yang?" He became alert. He was a little worried about his father's intentions. For example, Guazi felt that his father might want to rope in Brother Yang to change his mind. Gua Zhengyan glanced at the panicking Guazi and sighed in his heart. He doesn't have the demeanor of a general. However, he didn't want to waste time with Guazi. He said straightforwardly, "I want to talk to him about 2 things. First, Jiangnan TV station came looking for me. They hope that Yang Yi can increase their cooperation with them." There was no wall that didn't have a crack in the government. Guazi was Gua Zhengyan's son. Although this matter wasn't spread in the entertainment industry, it wasn't a secret among the higher-ups of Jiangnan. This was also why they hoped to contact Yang Yi through Gua Zhengyan. What cooperation? Start a program at Jiangnan TV station? Guazi was a little surprised. Now, Yang Yi's variety program had become a hot steamed bun in the eyes of the major TV stations. Shanghai TV station and Beijing TV station were the winners this year. Other TV stations were also secretly in contact with China Star Productions, hoping that there would be a new program broadcast there next time. Guazi didn't find it strange that Jiangnan TV station had such thoughts. However, looking for Gua Zhengyan for help was a little like using a butcher's knife to kill a pig. The deputy director of Jiangnan TV station is a classmate of mine from university. Gua Zhengyan briefly mentioned. Guazi didn't have any more questions. On the other hand, Gua Zhengyan also softened his tone. "I also want to see what kind of person your boss is. You stubbornly want to develop in the entertainment industry. In any case, the family has to give you some support." In other words, was he going to show off his muscles and support Guazi? Guazi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he couldn't go against his father's request. While he agreed, his mind was spinning crazily. It seemed like this was a very precious opportunity. Chapter 906. Brother Yang, I have a small favor to ask of you. On Thursday morning, at the Phoebe studio in Tingshan district, Guazi sneaked into the recording studio, approached Yang Yi, and carefully looked at Yang Yi. Murphy, who had just finished recording a song and was still discussing with Yang Yi, laughed. "Oh, Xiao Gua, why did you come to the company? Aren't you going to watch a movie with Ding Xiang today?" Last week, Ding Xiang had been helping to take care of Murphy and pick up Shishi at the villa because of Yang Yi's request. This week, Ding Xiang could finally go back. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Murphy felt that these two, who were in love, should be eager to find time to date. Why would they come to the company so eagerly? Hey, don't mention it. Didn't Sister Huan say that Director Du invited her to audition for the role of Lin Yujing? She could have just read the script by herself, but Sister Ding Xiang insisted on staying to help her analyze the plot. Speaking of this, Guazi was a little depressed. Of course, Guazi was just complaining. He still supported Ding Xiang. After all, Ding Xiang was warm-hearted, which was one of the reasons why Guazi liked Ding Xiang. With Guazi's relationship with Yang Yi, there was no need to beat around the bush. He directly stated his request. Big brother Yang, it's like this. Although my father wants to treat you to a meal, can I, please be a little thick-skinned and bring Sister Fei, the 2 children, Sister Xiaowan, and Sister Huan along? This guy even used the word, please, so politely. Your father invited me to dinner, why would I make such a big fuss? Yang Yi felt very strange. Murphy looked at Guazi with a strange expression. This was the rhythm of a family dinner. Well, Guazi scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, if so many of you go, can't you bring Sister Ding Xiang too? It turned out that he had an ulterior motive. You want your parents to meet Ding Xiang in advance? Or do you want us to support you? Can you introduce Ding Xiang as your girlfriend during dinner? After all, Murphy was a woman. She was more meticulous and immediately thought of the key point. No, it's not time to lay our cards on the table yet. Guazi hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm just warming up to let them know about Sister Ding Xiang. By the way, when you introduce her, please praise Sister Ding Xiang. There was no need to exaggerate. Just tell the truth. That is, I want to use your words to let them know how virtuous Sister Ding Xiang is and how good she is at taking care of people. Guazi wanted to let Ding Xiang leave a good impression in front of his family before he laid his cards on the table in the future. It was better to lay the foundation than to introduce her abruptly in the future. While Yang Yi was still in a state of sudden realization, Murphy was already discussing with Guazi with great interest. Then, what identity do you want Ding Xiang to follow us as? Is it just your manager? Or maybe I can have some other identities. What do you mean? Guazi didn't understand. For example, she can also be Yang Yi's sister. Or my sister. Murphy laughed. You can't fake it. If you make it up, the consequences will be more serious in the future. Guazi had a headache. It's not fake. This is what Yang Yi said himself. He wants Ding Xiang to be his godsister. Ding Xiang has no roots in Jiangnan. We are afraid that she will be bullied by you, so we want to be her backer. Ding Xiang is such a good girl. If you dare to treat her badly. Murphy waved her fist fiercely. However, her fist was not threatening. Murphy is right. Yang Yi nodded. His simple words were full of threats. Guazi was speechless. Sister Ding Xiang is so good to me. Why would I bully her? In TV dramas, young masters often abandon women. Murphy said, I'm not a young master. I'm just an ordinary person. Guazi struggled to say, of course they were just joking. Yang Yi and the others knew what kind of person Guazi was. Now, the main point was to discuss Guazi's plan of building one path in the open while hiding another in the dark. Let's not introduce Sister Ding Xiang like that. It's better to keep her identity simple, Guazi said. Okay. Yang Yi nodded. Murphy thought more. Huan shouldn't go. She might cause misunderstandings. What if Guazi's family took a fancy to Yang Huan? Of course, this was unlikely to happen. Others might think that the Yang family was trying to curry favor with the Gua family. After all, the Gua family was more powerful. It was better to have a young female lead in this kind of situation. Fewer misunderstandings would not mess up Guazi's plan. Yang Yi nodded and looked serious. Huan can't go. At this moment, Yang Huan, who was trying hard to memorize her lines, sneezed. Ding Xiang, who was checking her lines, was anxious. Why did you sneeze? Did you catch a cold? Why did you catch a cold at such a critical moment? In the afternoon, the bell signaling the end of the second class rang. The children packed up their small bags and prepared to go to the training class. Shishi also grabbed her textbooks and stuffed them into her bag. Of course, Shishi cherished the cleanliness of her books. Her books were neatly stacked in her bag. It had been 2 months, but the book cover that her father gave her was still intact. However, the little girl's movements were lighter than usual. She was very excited because she was going to take a drawing class later. She liked drawing very much, especially now that the teacher was not teaching pencil drawing or crayon drawing, but watercolor drawing that required paint and water. Whether it was the mixing of paint or the rustling of the brush on the paper, she found it very interesting. However, when she picked up her small bag and her drawing kit and was about to leave, she saw her homeroom teacher, Ms. Li Rulin, walk in. She blinked curiously and watched as Ms. Li walked to Lan Xian's seat. Lan Xian, I'm sorry. I have to take up some of your time. She was close and could hear the conversation between Ms. Li and Lan Xian. Are your parents at home this Saturday afternoon? Lan Xian answered obediently, My father is not at home. My mother is at home. It's good that your mother is at home. It's like this. I want to visit your home. The scheduled time is this Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so please let your mother know. I will also leave a message for your mother on the phone. If there's any inconvenience, please let me know in advance. Let's change the time, okay? Li Rulin smiled and patted Lan Xian's back. After the teacher finished speaking, she left. Lan Xian was still a little confused. What just happened? She listened to the whole process. The little girl's eyes darted around, but she did not have time to say anything. She rushed to her drawing class first. Chapter 907. She also had drawing lessons when she was in kindergarten. However, at that time, the teachers mainly focused on guiding her interest and didn't deliberately teach her some drawing skills. Yang Yi also didn't teach her. However, when she was in primary school, the teachers who taught her drawing lessons were much more professional. Just like those art students who majored in drawing in movies, the classroom where she and the others learned watercolor painting was also a small movable table. They would then form a circle, and in the middle of the circle, there would be flowers and plants that the teacher had brought over for them to draw. When they first started learning, the teacher would teach them how to use pencils to draw sketches, how to mix paints, and how to choose watercolor brushes with round ends, flat ends, or different sizes to color. After they had a certain foundation, the teacher would also teach them how to compose a drawing, how to use shadows or transitional colors to reflect rich tones and more. Of course, in terms of techniques, the teacher would also briefly introduce them to different brushstrokes such as dry brushstrokes, wet brushstrokes, hook brushstrokes, sweep brushstrokes, and pause brushstrokes. These were only explained in real life. After learning for 2 months, she could be considered a beginner watercolor painter. Although she couldn't combine many different types of techniques to draw, the flowers and plants she drew were the most similar among the students in the class. At least, she had the correct outline. Moreover, she was very sensitive to colors. Even if it was the same red color, she could always find a way to match it with other colors that looked better. If it was the rapid improvement in drawing, it might be because she had seen too much of her father's pencil drawings when she was young and had accumulated a foundation. However, the feeling for colors was completely innate to she. Even the teacher praised her endlessly for this little talent. Today, she's hyacinth pot of flowers was praised by the teacher. The teacher only praised 3 students. One is Zhang Lin, another is Wu Liang, and the last one is me. I'm the only one from the 1st grade. She had already told her father in the car. When she got home, she couldn't wait to take out her watercolor painting and ask her mother for praise. There are students from other grades in your class? Murphy was a little surprised. Aren't they also divided into classes according to their grades? Yang Yi smiled and explained, it's not the same. Their painting class is only divided into 3 classes. They are divided according to their learning situation. There's an introductory class, an advancement class, and an advanced class. Of course, the entry class started from scratch. For example, she was in the entry class, and the advanced class was after the entry class. The advanced class was a little special. The teachers would guide the children who had a certain painting foundation and teach them traditional Chinese painting or oil painting. Generally speaking, the teachers of the advanced class would select some gifted children from the advanced class and invite them to continue their in-depth studies. It was not open to other children to apply. Therefore, regardless of the age of the child, when they first signed up for the painting class, the teacher would arrange them into an introductory class or an advanced class based on their painting skills. After listening to her father's explanation, Shishi nodded her little head and said seriously, "There's a 6th grade big brother in our class. But his painting is not as good as mine." Murphy took Shishi's painting and praised, "It's really not bad. The blue petals and brown stems, as well as the green leaves. The contrast is very clear." Yang Yi had not seen it in the car, so he went over to take a look. To be honest, Shishi's painting was only at the introductory level. If he wanted to find fault, he could not find too many. For example, the strokes were not smooth enough, the petals were crooked, the stems were not straight, and the leaves were thin while the other was fat. The proportions were uneven. Shishi's best colors also had many flaws. For example, the color of the petals she painted was the same. She did not use any overlaying or brightening techniques. However, looking at Shishi's age, Yang Yi felt that she had already painted very well. At least, Shishi's painting was closer to the real thing, unlike other children's painting where all the flowers were big and round. Moreover, perhaps the little girl's brush strength was different. It looked like the same blue petals, but there were some changes in the depth. It looked like it was real. It's really good. Moreover, there are so many classmates, but the teacher still praised you. This shows that you are still working hard to learn. Continue to work hard. Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's little head and smiled. After receiving her father's praise, Shishi was even more happy, like a little penguin. She swayed left and right and even threw herself on the sofa next to her mother, asking her mother to help her put away the painting. Murphy had a habit of recording Shishi's growth. In addition to the routine photos, she kept every painting of Shishi's painting class in a large folder. Yang Yi was about to prepare dinner, but Shishi suddenly remembered something that she forgot to mention in the car. "Papa, let me tell you." The little girl ran over and took her father's hand. She looked up and said, "Today, I heard everything. Teacher Lee said that she was going to Xian Air's house to play." "Ah, go to Xian Air's house to play?" Yang Yi was a little surprised. "Yes, Teacher Lee said that Xian Air's papa and mom were not at home on Saturday. I was going to your house, and then Xian Air said that her mom was at home, so Teacher Lee said that she would go to Xian Air's house to play." She vividly imitated the conversation between Li Rulan and Lan Xian. Of course, she also added some of her own understanding. In the end, she pouted and said unhappily, "Teacher didn't even go to my house to play." That's right. Why would Teacher Lee suddenly want to go to Xian Air's house? Yang Yi, who had never been to school in his previous life, and who had never been to school in this life, was also confused for a moment. Murphy, who knew that she misunderstood something, could not help but snicker. She did not intend to expose them yet. She quietly watched how Yang Yi and she would discuss this matter. "Yes, my grades are better than Xian Air's. Teacher Lee doesn't even come to my house to play." She said unhappily, "Teacher Lee is very nice. She will mend my clothes and teach us how to sing. Papa, I also want Teacher Lee to come to our house to play." "What's the problem?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Xian Air's house is also here. Let's talk to Xian Air's mother. If Teacher Lee comes, let her tell us. We can invite her to come and sit with us." "Can we?" She looked at her father expectantly with her big eyes shining. "What's the problem?" "Yes, if you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have thought about it. Last time, Teacher Lee helped you mend your clothes. We haven't thanked her yet. This time, we have to thank her in person." Yang Yi smiled. Murphy was stunned. She did not expect that the father and daughter would do such a thing. If Teacher Lee did not come to visit, others would be happy. "You want to invite her halfway?" However, when Murphy heard this, she did not want to reveal the truth. She suddenly thought that it would be good to let the head teacher come to their house. She could ask about Shishi's situation at school, and also ask for advice on how to cooperate with the teacher better to educate the child. At this moment, Shishi was thinking wildly. On Saturday, little Yu, Sister Xiaowei, Chi-Chi, Shiyun, and Nan Xiaoyu will all come to my house to play. They must not know that Teacher Li will also come to our house to play. Yes, don't tell them first. Give them a surprise, Murphy said while holding back her laughter. Hee, okay. She said with joy. Chapter 908. Saturday arrived very quickly. In an old neighborhood in Wuhu district, Yu Xiaowei woke up very early. After eating breakfast made by her mother, she sat quietly in the living room and watched her mother walk around to pack things. Today, she had an appointment with her good friend, Shi, to go to her house to play. So, although Yu Xiaowei said that she was sitting quietly, her mood was not calm at all. From her uncontrollable smile, from the anticipation in her eyes, and from the slight movement of her knees, one could see the joy in the little girl's heart. Yu Ying was worried that her daughter would go to her friend's house alone, so she also took a day off today. Although she had to work until the end of the month, the new lobby manager who replaced her could basically take over her job very skillfully. So, for her daughter's sake, it didn't matter if she took a day off. The boss was very tolerant of her. But then again, accompanying her daughter to her friend's house to play was the first time Yu Ying got on a sedan chair. In the past, Yu Xiaowei didn't have many friends, and Yu Ying was busy making a living, so she basically didn't have much time to socialize. So, Yu Ying was a little nervous. As she packed things, she muttered, "Did we bring too many things? Let's not bring these, just bring a bag. But we need to bring a thicker coat for you. I don't know if you'll be cold when you come back tonight." Yu Ying didn't know the rules of Zhongqing, but according to the customs of her hometown, she couldn't go to other people's house empty-handed. So, Yu Ying took out the box of apples that she bought last night, turned to look at her daughter, and said, "Xiaowei, do you think it's okay for Mom to bring a box of apples over?" Of course, this box of apples couldn't be considered a lot. It was the size of an ordinary milk box, and probably could only hold a dozen apples. However, compared to going to the market to buy apples and carrying them there in plastic bags, this gift box of apples looked much more presentable. Yu Xiaowei looked at her mother in confusion. She hesitated for a moment and nodded. This kind of question was still a little too difficult for her. But Yu Xiaowei felt that the box of apples her mother carried was already very beautiful. The apples that her family usually ate were not so exquisite. At this time, Yu Ying's phone rang. Yu Ying's phone was a flip phone, and the screen was very small. She did not even look at the caller ID and answered the call directly. A magnetic male voice came from the receiver. "Hello, is this Ms. Yu Ying?" Yu Ying frowned slightly. She felt that this voice was a bit familiar, but she couldn't remember who it was. "Yes, and you are?" "It's like this. I'm the father of your daughter's friend. I even texted you yesterday to confirm the address. Aren't we a little early? She has been pestering me since a long time ago. She asked me to pick you and your daughter up so that you can come to our house to play." On the other end of the phone, there was a clear and cheerful voice. "Sister Xiaowei, I'm Shi. I'm outside your house." Indeed, Shi had promised Yu Xiaowei that her father would come to pick her up. However, this matter started when Shi invited Yu Xiaowei to her house to play. At that time, Yu Xiaowei was a little embarrassed, but that was because Yu Xiaowei had never been to a friend's house, so she was a little overwhelmed. However, Lu Xiaoyu next to her thought differently. She said that she saw Yu Xiaowei's mother driving a motorcycle. Lu Xiaoyu didn't distinguish between an electric motorcycle and a motorcycle, to pick up Yu Xiaowei yesterday. Shi's house was too far away. Yu Xiaowei must have been unable to go to Shi's house because she didn't have a car at home. Therefore, the enthusiastic Shi said that she could let her father pick up Yu Xiaowei. There was no need to elaborate on the following process. Now, Yang Yi had already driven Shi to the community where Yu Xiaowei lived. "It's really too much trouble for you. I don't know how to thank you. It's not early now. We have packed our things. We'll come out now. It'll be quick. Yu Ying replied with a smile as she sighed in her heart that her daughter had made a good friend who was warm and hospitable. After putting down the phone, Yu Ying called out to Yu Xiaowei, who had already stood up expectantly, "Let's go. Your classmate is outside. We can't let others wait for too long." "Mom, I'll help you." Yu Xiaowei took 2 steps forward, held her mother's hand, and whispered, "Thank you. Can you help me with this coat?" Soon, they walked to the entrance of the community. However, there were people and cars coming and going outside. It was impossible to find Shi's father's car in such a short time. After all, Wuhu district was not as sparsely populated as Tingshan district. Every inch of land here was worth its weight in gold. There were people setting up stalls on the sidewalk. Yu Ying let go of Yu Xiaowei's hand. She took out her phone from her bag with one hand and prepared to call the number just now. However, at this moment, a tall and sturdy off-road vehicle on the opposite side of the road rolled down the rear window. A cute little head popped out and waved at them excitedly. "Sister Xiaowei, we're here. We're here." Yu Xiaowei reacted quickly. When she saw Shi, a happy smile appeared on her face. She then pulled her mother's arm, who hadn't noticed yet, and said, "Over there, Mom. Shi is over there." Yu Ying looked up. When she saw Shi for the first time, she couldn't help but praise her in her heart. What a beautiful girl. Wasn't that right? Cici was already very pretty to begin with. In addition, her father had made her a hair braid of the same style, a beautiful dress, and that bright smile of hers. Even Yu Ying was stunned by her beauty. Yu Ying came from Sichuan province, which was full of beauties. Although she came from a rural area, this didn't stop her from having a pretty face. This was also why she could find a local in Shanghai to marry. Why she, a single mother working in Zhongqing, could become a lobby manager early. Yu Xiaowei wasn't bad either. Of course, she hadn't grown up yet. Also, due to her family's conditions, her dressing was a little old-fashioned. She looked like an ordinary little girl. However, no matter what, Yu Ying felt that she and her daughter paled in comparison to this little girl named Shi. She was a princess. They probably couldn't even be considered Cinderella, right? Of course, this was just a little bit of emotion from Yu Ying being shocked by Shi's beauty. Yu Ying was still very grateful to this girl who had gradually made her daughter become a little more cheerful. She led Yu Xiaowei to the big car. When they got closer, Yu Ying recognized the brand of the car. Valiant. Yu Ying was a little surprised. She wasn't a car fan and couldn't recognize the model of the car. However, she still knew the brand of the car. Sometimes, some rich guests would drive luxury cars to their restaurant to eat. As the lobby manager, Yu Ying was certainly not short-sighted. She knew that this brand of car would cost at least a few $100,000. The more expensive ones could even cost millions. The window of the driver's seat was lowered at this time. Previously, Yang Yi was worried that he would be recognized and cause unnecessary trouble. Therefore, when Yu Ying and Yu Xiaowei approached, he lowered the window and prepared to ask Yu Ying and Yu Xiaowei to get in the car. Chapter 909. The car window rolled down, and the moment Yu Ying saw Yang Yi's face, she stopped abruptly. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked at Yang Yi in disbelief. She was so surprised that her mouth was wide open. "Ms. Yu. Hey, watch the car carefully." Yu Ying didn't pay attention to Yang Yi's greeting. Fortunately, there were people coming and going on the road. The traffic was congested, and the speed was as slow as a tortoise. She stopped abruptly, and there wasn't a big problem. Moreover, Yu Ying was only in a daze. Immediately, her mother's responsibility woke her up, and she quickly pulled Yu Xiaowei over. However, her heart exploded like fireworks. "This is Yang Yi?" "Yes, it's Yang Yi. How could it be him?" Yu Ying was very familiar with Yang Yi's appearance. One must know that Yang Yi was her idol. Although she wasn't a fan, Yang Yi's development trajectory of coming out of the city and marrying a rich and beautiful woman was too inspiring. Yu Ying used Yang Yi's success to motivate herself, and she worked hard to write every word well. However, at this time, Yu Ying's brain was still in a state of shutdown. She got into the car dizzily, and she even foolishly sat in the back seat with her daughter. Fortunately, Yang Yi's car was relatively large. The three of them sat in the back, and it wasn't crowded at all. She was able to sit with Yu Xiaowei, and she immediately held Sister Xiaowei's hand and giggled. How are you, Yang Yi? Yu Ying finally couldn't help but ask. At this moment, she was really a bit like a fan who saw her idol. She was very excited. I'm Shi's father. Yang Yi smiled, and said as he started the Humvee. In fact, Yang Yi had already recognized Yu Ying. Before, he just couldn't match the person with the name, but when he saw Yu Ying, his super memory showed its effect. However, Yang Yi didn't intend to mention the incident of bumping into Yu Ying. After all, the other party's daughter was here. It was better not to embarrass her. But who knew that Yu Ying would bring it up herself? She patted her head and said in annoyance, "Right, Shi's bedtime story. I was wondering why the name Shi sounded so familiar. Yang Yi, I'm also a writer. I've applied for your fund to support children's writers before. Alright, I've also met you before. It was in April this year. At that time, I was very embarrassed. I went to your publishing house to submit a manuscript. Halfway through, I was looking for the washroom and accidentally saw you and manager Lu talking." Oh. Yang Yi had no choice but to play along and show an expression of sudden realization. "So it's you. I remember now, but you're doing well now. You've written The Adventures of Little Bubba. Manager Lu told me that your book is selling very well and has great potential. Besides, she likes your work very much." Because Yu Xiaowei was not familiar with Yang Yi, she was too embarrassed to speak loudly. So, before she could start chatting with her, they found that the two adults had started talking first. She blinked her eyes. After listening to her father, she giggled and said shyly, "Yes, I like Little Bubba very much. It's just that, it's too little. There's no more after it. The artist behind it is still drawing. It will be published as soon as possible." Yu Ying quickly explained. Being praised by Shi, Yu Ying was actually a little flattered. She couldn't help but praise Shi and her father. She gently put her hand on her daughter's shoulder and said, "Xiaowei, didn't you like Shi's bedtime story very much? These fairy tales were written by Shi's father, and the Shi in them refers to your good friend." Yu Xiaowei turned to look at Shi in surprise. She couldn't help but whisper, "Really? Yes, my papa wrote a lot of books." She opened her small hands and said proudly. The shock in Yu Xiaowei's heart made her speechless for a long time. The little girl found it hard to imagine that the little girl Shi, whom she had always envied, who had her father to accompany her and tell her stories, was actually her good friend. However, Yang Yi and she didn't show a superior attitude. There was no need to mention Cici. The little girl didn't take this matter seriously at all. She threw this topic aside lightly and couldn't wait to introduce to Yu Xiaowei the preparations she had made for her good friend at home. "Sister Xiaowei, I have a dog and 3 cats at home. When the time comes, I'll bring you along to play with them, okay? They're very cute, and I also have..." Yang Yi didn't think of himself as a great person. When he talked to Yu Ying, he also kept emphasizing that he was Shi's father. Today's protagonists were the children, so Yang Yi kept a low profile. Yu Ying didn't expect Yang Yi to be so approachable in real life. You know, Yang Yi's majesty left an indelible impression on her. Of course, it was also because Yang Yi and Lu Benji's seriousness that she was scared, so she mistakenly thought that Yang Yi was very scary. After the change of impression, Yu Ying also changed the honorifics according to Yang Yi's request. She simply called Yang Yi Yu instead of Yu. The Humvee drove steadily on the city roads, making people forget about its speed. Soon, the Hummer drove back to the villa area where Yang Yi's house was located. Seeing the villas with wide courtyards passing by in front of her, Ying felt that her eyes weren't enough to take in everything. Although she was already mentally prepared when she saw Yang Yi, when she saw these villas now, she couldn't help but secretly exclaim, "He's really rich, living in such a luxurious house." The thoughts of adults were more complicated, but the world of children was much simpler. At this time, Shi and Yu Xiaowei were huddled together. The two girls leaned against the car window and looked out. Shi excitedly pointed at a big villa that they had just passed by and said to Yu Xiaowei, "This is Xionaire's house. When we reach my house, I'll call Xionaire and ask her to come over to play." However, Shi underestimated Lan Xion's patience. When they arrived, Lan Xion was already in her courtyard, sitting on the swing and swinging around. This little foodie came early because she smelled the delicious food. "Xionaire! Look who's here!" Shi screamed and excitedly got out of the car with Yu Xiaowei. The few girls quickly gathered together and laughed happily. When Ying got out of the car, she was still a little confused. She felt like Cinderella who had broken into a royal garden. She had never seen such a beautiful courtyard before. The sun was shining brightly today, and the whole courtyard was warm. It was as if there was no place to stay in the cold of late autumn and early winter. It was still a lush green lawn with some winter flowers blooming around it. It was as if spring had already arrived here. Ying's eyes looked around and finally fell on the beautiful and dignified woman that Yang Yi was walking towards. When the car drove over, the beautiful woman was slightly bent over, taking care of a baby who was staggering on the grass. Of course, when the car stopped, she straightened up and looked at Yang Yi with a smile. Ying couldn't help but sigh, "She's really beautiful." She was tall, slender, beautiful, and her skin was smooth and supple. All of these qualities could be found on the other party. Ying subconsciously compared herself to the other party, and suddenly felt a sense of inferiority. Of course, she knew that she couldn't be compared to a superstar. She should be Murphy, right? The slightly plump lady behind her, is she Yang Yi's nanny? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.